Are we good now? Okay. Ooh, we made it just in time, I think, before our deadline here. We told everybody going to be 3:45. We got in just under the wire, so that is good. I wasn't sure we were going to make it. I had a lot of technical difficulties I had to fix today before we got live. But thanks, everybody. We're going to be getting started here in just a second. The idea here today is like we've done before. You bring your decks, and we're going to help you out with your decks. Generally, our rules here are simple. You can go to our Discord, and you can submit a deck, and you could be in the queue in order, or the other option is if you show up late, you can just go ahead and make a, I guess, bits donation or a super chat and skip the line. Kind of how we do things. So it's fair. If you come late, you got to pay a price. If you're here early, you get in before everybody else. Not really too much of a secret there. But I need to make sure. Okay, my overlays are all working. All right, we're all good. We're all good. Yeah, I guess the craziest thing right now is that Final Fantasy has a lot of weird stuff in it. Not in a bad way, just cards that work differently than other stuff we've had before. So some of it's just figuring out how all of that works together. And this is why we do these types of streams, so we can try to help people out and say, hey, maybe you need help with the thing, and we can help you with the thing. Because you just never know. So I'm going to give everybody a few minutes. I need to go share a couple of links around and let people know that we're live, because this was just like an impromptu stream. Some of it, too. If you have any questions while we're setting up, by the way, if you have any questions on the Commander format panel, if you want to ask about MagicCon Vegas, I don't know, standard bannings, whatever, feel free to pop in and ask about that as well while we're getting things kicked off. Because there's been a lot of stuff happening the last couple of weeks in Magic, and I've been too busy to even stream because I've been literally traveling, doing events, doing charity stuff during MagicCon Vegas, just all kinds of crazy things. So I haven't even had time to stream if I wanted to. Letting people know in the chats. So we are live now. If people want to come by and say hello, and then I'll pop over on the blue sky and let people know there as well. We're live helping viewers with decks. Boom, there we go. Nice and simple. All right. Let me hop back over here so I'm not ignoring the chat. For those of you that show up and want to participate in all the things, welcome. So there's going to be a few people look like they're starting to stroll in here. Not that. Let's get rid of that window. We don't need that anymore. All right, looks like a few of you hopped in here on YouTube, so welcome for stopping by. And a few folks already starting to hop in over on Twitter. So yeah, here's the thing, like, the only thing I'll say is when we're doing deck help things, please do not bring, like, I don't know, just a regular known deck. If you bring, I don't know, Mono Red or your Omniscience deck, and I don't know, I want to make this win more. Like, the deck's already good. There's not a lot we can do to fix it, right? You're already at the upper end of what those decks are capable of. So there's not a lot we can offer, right? If we want to see the decks that maybe you're close or you're struggling with, like, trying to make a certain card work out of the set, maybe you have a cool combo-y thing that you're struggling to get off the ground, whatever it is, that's what we want to offer help for today and help people out. Otherwise, you know, if there's nothing else, we'll just do some streaming of our own and play some other things, because why not? Let's see. Welcome, those of you that are just now joining us. It looks like a few people hopped on after we shared the information on social. Also, welcome to the Facebook, folks. We are streaming over on Facebook as well. So I want to say thank you for those of you that watch on Facebook. Not a lot of folks, but some of y'all, it's easier and convenient, and I understand that. I appreciate that. It's a view is still a view, you know what I mean? Ain't gonna be mad at it. I appreciate it just the same. Speaking of, let me hop over to that. Boom. There we go. All right, so we're live there as well. Thank you for those of you that are watching. All right, so we got folks kind of from all over now. Everybody coming in. Let me know what type of deck do you. And here's the other thing too: if you don't have a deck to work on, maybe you haven't even started one yet. The next question would be, what type of deck have you not seen yet that you would like to see, or deck that maybe the community hasn't really worked on? Is there a certain card you want to see featured that maybe we could build around, right? Because I think that's the other thing too, is sometimes you might be a fan of a card or an idea, but you don't even know the starting point, and we can help with that too. Because one of the things we always say is Magic is a fairly easy game to understand at its core, but deck building to streamline a deck can be difficult, right? It's the reason when people first start playing, especially on Arena, you'll see people that build 80 card decks, 100 card decks, right? Which is obviously not the optimal thing you want to do. Or you have the other problem where people will put in too many things trying to make a plan work, right? It's like, for example, I'm just going to throw an idea out, but somebody's playing a token deck and then they literally want every single card to say make a token. While in theory that makes sense, the reality is you need some things that maybe can use those tokens for something. You need some defensive cards, whether it's destroy creatures or artifacts or enchantments or whatever, right? You need some of that. How do you protect those against the long game? Do you have a way to make multiple tokens with one card so you don't have to overcommit to the battlefield, right? Things like that are considerations you have to make to compete against other decks, not just the idea of just make a bunch of tokens. Kind of what happened. Actually, the biggest problem where you see that is with the discard decks, right? They'll play a whole bunch of stuff to discards, but only a couple of real options to try to finish the game. So then you end up in the situation of okay, great, you've emptied your opponent's hand, but now you're destroying discard spells that don't do anything. Or if your opponent just has a way to keep drawing cards and you don't have another backup plan, well, now you can't even get rid of all the cards out of their hand fast enough and doesn't do anything. So you kind of have to figure out where the key cards are, the important parts, and make sure you have those and then build upon that, right? And this is kind of the tough part. I've had people ask, if I would make a couple of videos that are just, how to build a better Magic deck. But it's not, unfortunately, it's not so cut and dry. Though I do have some scripts written out that I have been working on. But the ultimate truth is I'm not happy with any of them, because one thing I'm realizing is no matter what you tell people about deck building with Magic, it almost feels like the next deck they go to build is going to be the exception to the rule, right? Like if we said, well, generally your decks want, and again, I'm just making up a number here, but we say you want 25 land, X number of creatures, X number of spells, this many things to deal with, whatever, blah, 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 right? But then the next deck we build will be, oh, well, it's a mono red deck and you don't really play defensive cards. So that stuff I just told you is worthless, right? And your average casting cost in your deck is 2. So you don't need 25 land. You could probably get away with 20 or 21. Right? So immediately the things I just told you aren't valid. And that's what makes it hard to say hey, here's the rules for building a Magic deck. And it's tough because I understand the average person wants a heuristic to just hey, when I'm deck building, I at least start here and I do these things. Which, on some level, that's not terrible to have. But a lot of decks just aren't going to fit that. And I'm guilty anyway, because on the YouTube channel, we kind of have fun, and a lot of my decks have 61 cards. And we just say it's just for greed purposes. I want the fun of that I can draw every once in a while and whatever. But some of that's because I'm making content or whatever. If I were playing a tournament, I would probably streamline it. I say that. I have played 61 in tournaments a few times. But generally, you'd try to just figure out what are the most important cards and just keep it down to 60. Luxy Fricks, how's it going? I said, this is awesome. You're taking questions. Yeah, actually, I am taking deck lists first and foremost if people want help with decks today. But if you do have a question, whether that's pertaining to the Commander format panel, to, I don't know, potential bannings, to Vegas, MagicCon, since that was last week and I was there, whatever, go for it. We can answer all those things. So yeah, this is a big social stream as well as a deck help stream for people if you got some things you want to do. Christmas, how's it going? Good to see you, friend. Got a few people starting to stroll in here. And this is literally just a weird prime time. Some people are on their drive home from work. I just had some time, figure I'd fire it up, help some people out if they wanted to. Mm. Hey, Nightshade, how's it going? Where did we submit a list? Conveniently, let me pull up the thing for the Discord, and I will just get you that link. And then the only thing we're asking is you please put it on a site that has an actual thing I can download the list. Don't post the card list. Post me a link to where it's hosted, because that is very important. It makes it way easier to get your deck lists, and we have minimal issues that way. Obviously, if I have a choice, I would say use Moxfield, but hey, there's a bunch of other choices that are reasonable as well. So we'll go ahead and post this in here for everybody in case you didn't see it. That's the link to the Discord. Hop in there, go to the standard channel, post a deck list, and I will snag it from there if you want to hop into the queue. Since you're still early, the queue is technically empty, so you would be next up at the moment. Oh, why did I put this here? I just realized I was in the wrong thing in my own Discord. Look at that. I'm just as bad as other people. But yeah, if you want to hop in, Discord link is there, and you can get your deck looked at. You can be the very next person to be ridiculed live on stream. No, I'm just joking. I try not to ridicule people, because Magic's hard, man. Games are hard. I think that's the other thing, too. We put a lot of pressure on ourselves as gamers to be better. A lot of gamers put a lot of their self-worth in their games, and I think that's actually kind of bad. It takes away your ability to enjoy the game for fun, especially when there's nothing at stake, right? To watch people be mad at their games when you don't have an entry fee involved, you're not playing for any prizes, is kind of sad in some ways. And I don't mean that like in a demeaning way, but empathetically, it's very sad to see that people can't enjoy themselves doing something that should be very fun. It's kind of like I told people multiple times this past weekend at MagicCon. If you're walking around upset when you're in a room with 20,000 fellow gamer nerds doing gamer nerd things, that's kind of on you. You know, like, why'd you buy a ticket? Why'd you show up? It's just weird to me that people hold that mentality. Old World My Mac, how's it go? Or Mike Mac? Mick Mac. I don't know, but either way, welcome. Hey, Jay White, how's it going? Not able to stay long, bad storms moving through. Yeah, get safe, man. I remember some crazy storms when I used to live down south. I do not wish those on anybody. Catastrophe says, is this mostly help for decks that aren't quite working, or also for decks we think are good enough, but we still want another set of eyes? If they're not mainstream decks, we'll take a look regardless. I just don't want people rolling up with like, look at my Is It Aggro deck, or my, I don't know, Omniscience deck. What can you do to help me make it better? Like, dude, they're already good. What are we doing, right? We don't want that. But anything else, we'll take a look at. Because inevitably, every time we have somebody that just submits a regular known deck, and it's just like, what are we doing? You know, that's even it's weird to watch people brag about, well, I beat so and so with this like whatever deck. It's like, yeah, everybody knows that's a good deck. Like, you know, congrats if you win a tournament, because you might be trying to qualify or whatever. But just like bragging about beating a random person with a deck is weird. Odd Eyes Gaming. Hello. Well, hello. I don't know if that's a typo, if that's hello in another language, but either way, hello. Jay White says you're in Kansas. Yeah, that whole like Midwest and South area, you get some crazy storms. I'm out in the Northwest now, so I don't get those too often. Mono Black is getting shaken up after rotation. Yeah, probably, because I mean, what do we lose? Go for the Throat and Shieldred? I think most of the other cards stick, though. I don't know. I'd have to look. I have one here that I've been messing with. What do we lose at rotation? Because Cecil's still in. Oh, Cut Down goes away, I think. Dreams of Steel, Duress. We have Duress is still around. Tiny Bones still around. Dark Confidant's new. Deep Cavern Bat still stays. Go for the Throat goes. Strategic Betrayal. Gix goes, but Gix has been in and out of mono black decks anyway. Preacher stays. Carsey Revenant. Shield. So they don't get that shaken up. And there's always going to be some removal piece. I think the biggest thing they lose is Cut Down, to be honest. If anything. So yeah, the deck will still be mostly the same. At least I would think so. Could you submit a 4-color control traditional historic list? If so, where? I'm mostly going to be looking at standard stuff. I can't give you actual good feedback on non-standard formats right now. Like, I mean, I could look at the deck and just say what it might need or whatever, but I'm not going to be able to give you specific cards or not because I haven't been focusing on those formats. I generally focus on non-standard stuff for about 3 weeks leading up to events where I have to do commentary for those. So, you know, like if I have to do timeless or historic or whatever, I'll get familiar, I'll watch videos, I'll talk to people who play it, just so I'm up to speed so I can do commentary on them properly. You know, so I'll use my downtime to do research on those. But after that, I don't really look at them again until the next project, you know, whatever that happens to be. Yeah, half says they don't want help, they want validation. Yeah, when they have those decks. That's true. Unless you homebrewed yourself, because I only play decks I homebrew. Okay. And I'm not saying this is you particularly, Odd Eyes Gaming. But I also want to say that there is a section of the community that puts too much weight on I can't play a neck deck. And I always tell people, like, there is space for that because some people just don't have the time to go into the lab and try to come up with something, right? And if I'm already working on an idea, and I've done this, I've even said about it on my channel before, right? When I've done a video like, well, I was going to build around this card, but I saw this other person already did it. So let's start with their list, and then we'll just fix that one up, or whatever, right? In the way I use the example of when we started making electric cars, we didn't start all the way over and make square cars with square wheels, right? We knew round wheels work. We knew the aerodynamics of a car worked. So you start from there, and then you change whatever parts you want if necessary, right? Somebody building a deck already, improving itself, isn't a bad thing necessarily. I know there's some pride in doing it with your own. Nothing wrong with that. But to just be mad at people playing net decks, no, I get it. I really do. Primal Odin is a killer card if you zombify it. Can be. I mean, but a lot of things can be if you zombify them. But all right, we have a couple of people who have hopped in the queue here, so let me go ahead and grab those. And we will look at our first couple of decks of the day. I don't know how long we're going to be doing this either. It was kind of just on a whim. I was available, so I figured I would take a look and see what we could do. So let's open this link. So first up, we have Catastrophe. By the way, I might be doing something crazy in a couple weeks. We're going to go stay in a fancy treehouse for a couple of days. I don't know how many of y'all have done that, because I definitely haven't. But, you know, sounds like a neat idea. And it's all fixed out. I mean, they have, like, access to internet and whatever in it. So it's not like it's just random treehouse. But I don't know. I want to try it. See if it's any good. It sounds crazy. And to be honest, just to get away after being around people forever for the last, gosh, I don't know, damn near 3 weeks straight, it feels like. Like, y'all, there was a stretch of, like, I don't know, in 15 days, 16 days, I was at home for less than 48 hours. Like, I literally got home, did laundry. The next day, we went out and eat, ran errands. I was back on the plane the next day in the morning to go back out to Vegas. Like, that's how crazy my schedule's been recently. So that's why you saw those videos where me shooting from hotel rooms and weird lighting or whatever, because I was on the road, you know, I had to make the content some way. So that's a real thing. I'm going to go ahead and set this up. We have Shadows is going to be next up in the queue. And we're going to have Catastrophe right now. So I'm just making sure that's noted so the queue is at least clean and I don't have that. But all right. Let's look and see what we've got here. A Sultai Deserts list. Now, and this is kind of interesting because deserts were kind of a thing, and then they weren't a thing, and they kind of like pop up here and there from time to time. So it's kind of cool to see somebody giving this a shot again. Let me get caught up on the chat real quick. Says, Till it's a Musk and a Cybertruck. Bro, I don't know. So, I feel bad for people who bought into the hype and got a Cybertruck. Hey, thanks for the raid there, friend. Because so many people I know that have been in them, have test drove them, people that own them, they just apparently have like infinite issues, which is sad. Um, Same deck you did for submission as you canceled a while back. I've worked in a lot. Okay, cool. Neptic says, long time Final Fantasy fan, new to Magic. Been mostly playing Arena and some paper with friends. Been curious about draft and going to play at my LGS. What do you recommend for learning effectively? And I've been going back and... okay. So, for this statement itself, I would say... probably, there. If you want to, I would watch other people that do a lot of streaming of limited play. Like Numot the Nummy. I think MTG Nerd Girl does a fair amount of drafting, like just to understand what works and what doesn't, as far as that goes. But for going down to your LGS, just go. Genuinely, just go. Like, there's nothing wrong with going down there. Like, if nothing else, they're going to be pretty friendly. They're going to show you their schedule. You can decide when you want to come up and play or meet other players. Figure out when stuff's going on. If you want to build a deck, obviously buying cards locally is always good. It helps keep your store going so you have a place to play. So, like, yeah, as far as the LGS part, just go and check it out. Jay White says, I've been there. I used to fix computers on oil rigs in the seas. So in 60 days, I was traveling 48 of them. Ah, that's brutal. That's tough. Legend, true. Yeah, Legend VD does. Legend does a lot of drafting. Actually, wait, Legend VD? He does a lot of standard stuff. I didn't know he does a lot of drafting. Nizahan is pretty good for limited. I'll take your word for it. I can't vouch for. I just mentioned the couple I can actually vouch for. Not that the other people are bad. I just don't know. I'm not familiar with their game, as the phrase goes. So I can only recommend what I could recommend. All right, so let's take a look at this. So. And what we're referencing earlier is if you're in the Discord, periodically I'm going to be going through and letting people submit decks that can be featured on the YouTube channel. So if you're in the Discord, I'll open it up. It can be submitted, or I'll work on it, whatever, and try to make it viable to be played on the YouTube channel. Either or, all the rules for everything are in there in a pinned comment, so you can go check that out. But for this one, so nothing too crazy going on here. Iridescent Vine Lasher makes sense. We're staying in... I mean, here's the toughest part about this deck, for my money, is that the blue is nice, but not particularly necessary. I think is what I came down to in this. Even when my personal builds, when I tried it, there's just enough quality black and green cards that if we're trying to trigger free strider lookout, you know, because you're trying to commit a crime every turn, there's just a bunch of good options. You know, even more so now you get stuff like Disruptive Stormbrood. And I haven't even looked at much in Final Fantasy that would fit something like this. But, yeah, Desert's Dew is an interesting one. Give a creature -2/-2. Gets -3 if you have a desert. So not a bad removal spell. I don't know if I would want to play this over just a regular removal spell, whether it's, you know, cut down or something or whatever, because it's the same cost. They're both instants. There are a few situations where this is going to be better. If you're trying to get rid of like a Cacophony Scamp or the mouse that deals damage equal to its power when it dies, right? This is better against those, but it's worse against the bigger stuff. So something like that, I don't know. I might just play Go for the Throat or some other 2-mana spot removal, whatever, that I exile something or whatever. I think it just has more uses there for me. The blue is there for making it go big later and because it needs a third color for access to more desert. No, that I get. That I get. Like, you're trying to have a big finish. And obviously, you know, deserts in general, you just want more of them, which also makes sense. But I don't know how many total deserts you really need. Because I remember in the versions I played, because what does this one have? This one is 12, 16, 18. I don't know if I played 18 deserts. I feel like I was somewhere between like 15 and 16, and that was still plenty. But yeah, I don't have a problem with it. There's really not a lot to change here, honestly. I think I've said it in my videos before. I'm not a fan of Spelunking. I get why it's in here. I'm not going to tell you not to play it. Just me personally, I feel like I almost never get my real value out of it. So, But Spelunking's good, obviously, when you get a doppelgang and get your copies and, you know, all that stuff. So I don't have a problem with it. But yeah, there's really not a lot to say on that. I mean, the deck is what it is. I would switch a couple of cards just for preference. But, I mean, Intimidation Campaign, it's a fine card. The issue I had with it is it's just super slow in the current environment. Even when it's played against me, I almost never care that my opponent has it. I'm like, okay, cool. I mean, obviously good if you have like Free Strider Lookout, because that's another way you can have an opponent lose life or whatever. But, it wasn't a thing for me. So for me personally, I'd probably replace Intimidation Campaign with some other threat that also potentially commits a crime, and I would change Desert's Dew to just a hard removal spell. But otherwise, yeah, the rest is mostly what it is. I mean, it's one of those decks, unfortunately, you're just kind of, I wouldn't say trapped into, but when you're trying to build around deserts, you're kind of limited to what you can do. Unless you want to play, I guess, maybe like the Worm that cares about you can play it as Flash if you have a desert, or it's in a graveyard, you can search for a desert, right? I think it's a Worm. At least I'm pretty sure. This thing, Colossal Rattleworm, because at least you get a big 6/5 Trampler at a reasonable cost, right? So that's a thing. And you can play it if they have like a sweeper or some such. You know, I'm good with it. But otherwise, yeah, I wouldn't mess with it too much. I was trying to think of other things in blue I might want that could be interesting, but there's not a lot. I mean, I guess you could get quirky with, I don't know, what's that new guy? Go-Go, if you want to copy triggers on something. Go search for more land with Lookout or something. That could be kind of weird, but yeah, not a lot. Yeah, there's really not much else I'll have to do to this. I mean, you're kind of playing most of the cards that are reasonable to play here. Yeah, trying to take advantage of stuff. Yeah, counters are fine too. I don't have a problem with that. Like in my version, I probably wouldn't play Intimidation Campaign because it's just not my jam. You know, the advantage you get out of this deck is between Spelunking and your Free Strider Lookout. Just getting more lands and thinning your deck to give you better draws, you know, generally speaking. I have wanted to play decks, though, with Virtue of Knowledge. It's just, every time I have it in a deck, it's one of the first cards I cut, because it's just, for me, and I'm sure others have different experiences, but for me, this is the type of card that I just call it style points, right? And I'm usually already winning. That just lets me win better, right? I try not to use the term win more, because if a card really helps you win more, you play it. This just helps you win better, in my experience. Like, I'm already ahead. This just lets me do more of the thing I'm already doing. I love mono green Tifa Hydra. Those decks are neat, but they're kind of all in, and if they miss, they just crumble. You know what I mean? Like, they have to just get it done all at once. Yeah, other utility cards you might have missed. Yeah, there's not a lot, really. If anything, it's just how do you get more things to close the clock, right? Because you only have 16 creatures, and a couple of them are kind of small. Where like Vine Lasher does incremental damage, so it needs to be in the deck. I'm not saying don't play it, but that's kind of one of the reasons I was thinking of Rattleworm, because as it stands right now, if they have 1 or 2 early removal, you don't really have a lot of threats to do much to the opponent. Like, and while you have something like Disruptive Stormbrood, you actually don't want to play it. Well, one, you can't because it costs 5, so you can't play it early. But you really want to use it as supplemental removal for the deck more than anything else. So, yeah, if I was swapping those other spots, I might play Rattleworms just to get the creature count up and have something more threatening. Well, once your opponent knows what you're doing with Tifa, they're never going to let you do it a second time. That's generally true. Oh, sure, Greenblade can end up huge fast, but it also dies to a lot of removal, you know, fairly easily. And that's just kind of what it is. Not that it's not a bad card. You still play it. You're playing a lot of deserts. Obviously, this thing can be +6 or 7 fairly easily. You know, nothing wrong with that. But it also doesn't have flying. It doesn't have trample. So it can be chump blocked by a bunch of things. You know, even the red decks are making tokens they can block with. Mono black has the small death touchers that are annoying. You know, like, that's kind of the issue. Oh, well, yeah, no doubt. This deck can win without swinging. Absolutely. I'm not arguing that. Like, I understand how it works. But that's what I'm saying. For my money, I just have more threats. It was kind of like what happened. I saw a few people were upset with the deck we played the other day, the blue-white life gain deck. And I took out the ley line. And people were like, oh, I really want to see ley line action. It's like, yeah, but it kind of doesn't do much unless you're already late in the game and already set up. So I'm kind of glad I replaced it because the deck works a lot better without it. Sort of why I end up cutting Virtue from a lot of my decks. But, you know, again, it's personal preference. I'm not going to tell you not to play it. The card still does stuff. You know, it's not like it's bad. But, you know, if you played a couple of counters, played a couple of Rattle Worms, feels like that gives you another axis to try to win with, which I like. Need another Amonkhet set for Deserts to Matter? It's possible. I don't know when we'd be going back to Amonkhet. We at least referenced it in, was it Ether Drift? I think was the thing. Let's see. Backing up here just a little bit to make sure we're all caught up with everybody. Neo Death, how's it going? Hello. It's just saw your comment in there, friend. Gonna let everybody know if you want to get in here and get your deck looked at, we will go ahead and post the Discord link again, so it's here for everybody if you want to snag that. You can hop in there, go to the standard channel, post your deck list, a link to your deck list, not just the deck list, but a link to wherever it's hosted, and we'll get you in the queue. Once it fills up, I'll let everybody know, and then after that, you're going to need some type of super chat, donation, whatever, to skip the line. Also, thank you for that little bit there. Okay, let me hop in here and go grab Shadow's deck list and see if anybody else is in the queue that we need to update in general. Looks like we have Phil Jackson will be next up after Shadows. Only thing I ask is that if you have a deck list, it's not just one of the regular standard deck lists, because we always have somebody who does that. And we don't have any input if a deck's just a normal deck, right? There's nothing to talk about. If you bring your is it list, it's just, okay, are you playing the version that cares about VV or not? Right? We can swap up to the other one. That's kind of the whole thing. There's really not much else to talk about in that regard. And I get it. Some people, like was mentioned in the chat earlier, are just looking more for validation, and that's cool. But that's not what this is here for. We want to try to help people fill in gaps on tough ideas. Because Magic's hard sometimes. And sometimes you just need another set of eyes. And I'm not always going to be great. Believe me. There are a lot of decks I put together that y'all never see. I've had a whole day where I probably wasted 12, 13 hours on 6 different decks that just went nowhere. That's just the nature of deck building sometimes. You got to make those errors so we can learn from them. What cards am I missing for this deck? Must be something new that I didn't craft enough of. Oh, yeah, Cypher and whatnot. Okay, that makes sense. I was like, wait a minute, what am I missing? Been messing with the bird deck, but it's not good yet. Well, the Chocobo decks are actually pretty reasonable, to be answer. All right, so this is for Shadows. I'm assuming you're still here in the chat. Otherwise, I'll be talking to no one. Godshammer says, what's up? I've been watching your videos for a while. Thanks for the deck ideas. Well, thank you for watching. I appreciate it. Okay. So, Rakdos, Brindhilder, Aggro. Okay, so we've got some removal. I'll probably just, I know some people like seeing it like this. I'll put it like this. And actually, people ask like why I do vertical, because when there's actually a thing that when I'm talking about a deck list and I'm going through cards, I can get people to focus on a card more if I do it like this and discuss it. And when people come back, it's easier to find the spot if they just want to highlight what I said about a card versus when it's like this. So I open the videos like this. You can see the list if it's just a thing to you, because some people are like, I can't see the mana curve. Like, it doesn't matter if you can see the mana curve. It really doesn't. Like, some decks generally don't follow a mana curve. Some decks are just built like that in this day and age. Just the way Magic works. But that being said, I get it. Some people want to see it. So we open it like this, and then we show it the other way, so we can go down all the cards and like talk about them individually. But anyway, so we have our removal. We have Highway Robber to get cards. Obviously, Brynhilder, because that's what this is based around. Unstoppable Slasher. Infamous Cruel Claw. That's interesting. All right, and then this is trying to get some free Return to the Battlefield Transformed. All right. Whenever a creature control attacks alone, it gains double strike. When this deals damage to a player, you can cast target instant and sorcery card mana value 3 or less from your graveyard with the, well, okay. I don't think Cypher belongs in here for 2 reasons. One, this deck rarely is going to want to attack with just one thing unless you're trying to make a thing happen. And 2, we don't have that many instants or sorceries that cost 3 or less. We have 7 cards, right? Or am I missing something? Yeah, Cypher just doesn't do anything. He's just an overcosted 3/4. So yeah, I would yeet this guy to the moon. I'd give him the Jey Uso. Like, this doesn't do anything. Unless I'm missing something. Like, I'm reading this for the 3rd time. And I mean, I guess if you want to try to double trigger Cruel Claw is what we're trying to do, maybe. Because if you deal damage with this, it transforms, and that's cool, I guess. Unstoppable Slasher, but most people either just block this or whatever as it is. So, I mean, I guess if that's the goal is to try to get either of these guys through, because I guess you would do 11, because you deal 4 and then it triggers, or they lose life twice. So Slasher into Cypher. I mean, I guess that's the plan. I mean, I don't know. I sort of feel like if you're going to do that, why not just go all the way in and just play the Aclazot's whatever, right? The 2/4, and then you can just end the game. We're just taking like the long route to do the thing that we could already do otherwise. Like, I don't know. And you just get to deal double damage with all your other stuff as well. And you don't have to attack with just one thing. Right? Because then that becomes the other problem. Because they already know you have the Unstoppable Slasher. So they're probably going to leave something back or leave removal up. Then you play Cypher. Then you attack with your one thing. And then they just kill your one thing. You know, like, I don't know. I'm not going to say it's terrible. It just feels like there's other ways we could go about things here. Coldstoke Gear Hulk. This lets you get stuff out of the graveyard for 1 turn, right? Return target creature with mana value 4 or less from the graveyard to the battlefield under your control with a finality counter. Creature gets menaced, but will exile that creature at the next end step. Okay. And that has to be 4 or less. So you can get back slashers. You can get back this guy, which could be kind of cool. That just lets you wipe stuff out. 4 Gear Hulks, huh? I mean, well, the problem is Slasher never really goes to the graveyard, right? Either comes back into play or it gets exiled. Eject doesn't really work because then it'll come back on the backside, but then it gets exiled at the end of turn. What are we hoping to get with the Gear Hulk, I guess? Like, what's our best case scenario? Why would Jack not exile? Oh, because you have to exile it to transform it. That's fair. That's fair. He's not... That's the one tough part for this set that I've had to remember. Some cards are actually exiling to transform, and some just transform without leaving the battlefield. There's not a consistent reason as to why some of them exile and some don't, which is very weird. That's the thing. Like, some cards in the set actually exile to transform, and some just transform. So a little bit of a weird situation, but yeah, that's fine. So Ject is a thing. I don't know how much we care. I mean, Cruel Claw getting that back is fine too, I guess, because if they kill your Cruel Claw on 3, then you Coldstoke, get it into play, try to get a freebie. Actually, I could see some ways this could work. With these 2 cards in particular, with Ject and with Cruel Claw. I don't know if I care. Like, again, we're never going to get to do it with Unstoppable Slasher, Brynhilder. So, I mean, it really works with just 2 cards in the deck, which is fine. I mean, they're okay on their own. So, I don't hate that. The problem, though, is these are both 4 mana things, is the issue. Like, the Cruel Claw thing makes sense, because you can play Cruel Claw on 3, they kill it. Then on turn 4, you play your Gear Hulk, and then you get your Cruel Claw and get to attack with it, right? You kind of have to wait to get extra value out of it with the eject, I think is the issue. Josh, you didn't have to use all caps. We could hear you, buddy. It's okay. But yeah. Primal Odin's a fine card. I don't have issue with it. Obviously, it kills something when it comes to the battlefield. I don't know if we have a way to really trick it past the opponents. Because we don't have anything giving it trample. We don't have anything giving it flying. I mean, I like the card, but I would wonder if there's something better we can play instead of this. Well, we can't reanimate it, right? This says 4 or less. And this costs 6. So we can't just reanimate it, right? Or am I missing? Do we have another reanimator card in here? I mean, I guess we could get it free off of Cruel Claw, possibly. Obviously, you try to high roll. In lands? What do you mean? Also, obviously, we got to clean up the lands. We need more multi-lands here, but I'm not going to worry about that. We know we need multi-lands. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not sure. Everything else, I at least see what we're doing, right? There's some things you're trying to trick through with. Yeah, no, I get what you're saying. Like, you can rogue, but understand that you're asking to have to get to 6 mana, have to have gotten the Rogue's Passage still out. You know, like, not saying it can't ever happen, but you're asking for a lot. And you're also playing colorless lands in a deck that has a fair amount of needing colored mana requirements, especially if you're playing Coldstoke, that needs 4 colored mana as well, right? That's the other thing. Not saying it's impossible. Obviously, it can still happen. We've seen it happen with different things. But if anything, I would cut this to 2 at best. I don't think I'd be playing 3. I'd also be concerned that they would gum up your hand early. Again, upside is you could hit 1 off Cruel Claw, and then it becomes pretty dang good, right? Obviously, if you get that to happen. But otherwise, I mean, because I don't mind Rogue's Passage when you're playing Cruel Claw and playing Slasher, obviously, right? Give you some upside on those. So I kind of like the concept. I think that's the main thing I would change. I would cut this down to 1, and I'm trying to figure out what I would replace that slot with. And I don't know exactly what that would be just yet. This is an interesting card, though, to include here. Deals damage equal to its power to each other creature if it was cast from graveyard, discard, or hand, draw 4. You're probably never going to use the second part, but the first part, obviously, against, like, the red aggro decks and such, is actually not terrible. Is there a good treasure maker? You have the... let's see. Draw, discard, treasure. The little 1/1, which is pretty cheap. Like, this makes a treasure, which isn't bad. You've got Siege the Spoils, which isn't bad. You could also potentially try Collector's Vault. However, it's a little bit slow, but it does help you set up targets for Coldstoke Gear Hulk if you want to do that. But generally, I'd probably be on either Scoundrel or Seize the Spoils. One of these to be that last spot. And it can just be the filler spot that is just a utility card. Because really, Scoundrel does give you multiple options, right? You either get a 2/2, you get to draw and discard, or you make a treasure, right? Depending on what's part of the game you're in. So I would do that. It would help your mana a bit. It makes the deck a touch cheaper, not a lot, but you are heavy right now because you've got, what is that? 3, 6, 9, 10, 11. 11 cards at 4, 4 cards at 5, and now we reduce it to 2 cards at 6. That's a very, very heavy mana situation with no real way to ramp up and only one real way to trick a card onto the battlefield, you know, with Cruel Claw. So we'll see. I do like that this could give stuff haste if it lives. because, you know, playing and getting a Cruel Claw behind it, or on the last turn getting, you know, even Ject could be kind of sweet. So I don't hate that. I will say this though, playing Sunspine Leaks does create a small problem for you because you're trying to minimize the number of non-basics you have, so you're not damaging yourself. So I get that. But the other side of it is you're also gonna make for some weird draws sometimes where you just don't have the right colors you need to cast the cards you want. You know, so this is one of those cases like it's a tough spot, right? Because you're doing it for a reason, but that reason could also backfire on you. That's why generally you'll see the links when the deck's like predominantly red and just has like a sprinkle of another color, because it doesn't hurt you as much if you miss one of your non-basics or whatever. Here, I could see some situations where, you know, you draw a bunch of red and like one swamp and you're like, okay, well, this is, I'm kind of backed up on what I can do. So it's a little tough. It's a little tough, but man, I'm just trying to think like if for my money, what I would do. I'm not going to say take Cypher out because it's part of the thing you want to do with the deck, and I get that. So I'm not going to touch Cypher. But I would actually cut one of these Nileham Flames. I don't even know how we say that. I'm not an expert in the Final Fantasy Nibelheim Flame. And probably even one Coalstoke. Partly because it is 5 mana, but you also need to have stuff in the graveyard to get and whatever. It is a cool card, though. It does have Menace, which is also nice. I always find it funny when big creatures have Death Touch, too. And then I would add more Charming Scoundrel. And then this gives you a chance to either make more treasure to set up other cards or to dig deeper later in the game. Also remember that if you just top deck it, you can just play the card and you don't have anything to discard. You still get to draw one just for free, which is super nice. And then this could also allow you to do stuff like going from 2 mana to 4 mana and maybe either playing a Sunspine Lynx or Eject early or whatever to cause some problems for your opponent. So I think that helps a little bit more overall. That's probably where I would be. And that's probably a little cleaner than what it was before. It'll help your mana situation since you're so heavy. Because like we said, you have so many cards that are 4, 5, or 6 versus that are 2 or 3, right? So that little bit of mana could make a big difference. I would say while playing it early, if you get a Charming Scandal, it's probably always going to be to make treasure. And you're probably going to have to like nurse that treasure very carefully to make sure you're using it the best way you can to take advantage of stuff. But overall, I mean, I see what we're doing. It's not bad. I could appreciate it. Though, when it comes to playing Highway Robbery, are we now saying we should be playing that, what is it, the opera song or song of the opera love song, this thing. It's an instant, you can exile top 2 cards of the library, you can play those until your next end step, or 1 or 2 creatures each get +2/+0. Which could be better in this deck if you are on a turn where you have Cypher, and you can make something an extra +2, because that's 4 more damage that your opponent would necessarily see coming. So I would consider it. I think this could actually be useful to play. Even just having the option of either of those 2 things. In worst case scenario, you just play it during your opponent's end step and you have access to those cards on your turn. You know, so that's probably a decent swap you can make there too. I mean, I would not be surprised if this card becomes the de facto card to do this ability. For, I wouldn't say necessarily for the remainder of its life in Standard, but for a long time, at least for the next year or so, till we get something even more reasonable. But yeah, this is probably what I would end up with. At least for now. I would have to play it to see how much of a difference those changes made or whatever. But yeah, probably something in this space is where I'd be aiming to be. Alright. I will post again for anybody who is just got here and wants to get in the queue. You hop into the Discord, you go to the standard section, and you post a link to where your deck is hosted. Not to the deck itself, but a link to your deck list on some site. If you just post the deck list, I will ignore it because too often people post lists that have some type of error in it and it doesn't load into Arena, and it's just a bad experience. So we're trying to avoid that. Obviously, I'm going to recommend you use Moxfield since they are big supporters of the channel. That would be appreciated. Big Mish, you just made the mistake we were just talking about. You posted a deck list without posting a link to the place to do it, and that's probably bad. However, you're next. Oh no, actually, you're not next. Phil Jackson is next. So we will take a look at their list and see what we got going on. See what this one is. Boop doop doo. I do like seeing all these different decks though, because you never know what people are working on. There's lots of fun ideas out there. I think it's very easy to get caught up in let's all play the best decks or whatever, but yeah, I mean there's some cool choices out there. And you never know. I might find something fun from y'all to feature on a channel at some point. Golbez Artifact Standard. Oh man, this one's going to be a tough one for me. Because I looked at Golbez and I wanted to play with it, and then I couldn't find anything I really liked to do with it. Alright. So what do we got here? We have a lot happening. Obviously, the goal is to play as many artifacts as possible, so this all makes sense. Add a mana to cast an artifact spell or an activated ability of an artifact source. Alright, we have some better Triumphs, some Tithing Blade, Visage, enters their hand opponents. Choose an artifact creature card from it. That player discards a card. Fair. Wreckage Wicker Folk. I had somebody play this against me for the first time just yesterday, I think, actually. Interesting card. I don't know how much we need stuff in the graveyard, but, you know. At the beginning of your end step, if you control 4 or more artifacts, return target creature card from graveyard to your hand. Then if you control 8 or more artifacts, each opponent loses life equal to that card's power. Whenever an artifact enters, you surveil 1. And this is for each... 4 or more... If you control 4 or more artifacts. And then you have to control 8 plus. Yeah, man, there's just so many things here. Guarantee if there are 8 or more permanents in your graveyard. Whenever you cast a permanent spell using mana produced with this, up to one other target permanent control becomes a copy of that. I mean, my problem with Everflowing Well is I never really know what I want to copy with. What's the best thing we could copy with this? Like, obviously, if we already have, like, an Oil Deep Down or something, then, like, maybe we copy that? But yeah, I'm not excited about Everflowing Well. I mean, it does draw to, you know, that's fine. You know, like, it does get cards. But I'm just not sure how important it is. Obviously, Gearhulk's good. Memory Garden's fine if you get some number of these other things to stick because you're playing a lot of artifacts. That makes sense. Return an artifact card from, or target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield. Costs 3 less to cast if it targets a creature card with mana value 3 or less. Creature card from your graveyard to... I mean, the only thing I really want to return is Flesh Gorger, right? If it's in the graveyard. I mean, every once in a while we might get back like a 3/4 flyer or something, but... Trying to think what else I would do with this. Let me just put in artifacts and take a look for a second. Honestly, I want to look at things that are artifacts and things that are creatures. And just see how we feel about this. Because I'm not sold on a couple of cards here. I'm just trying to see if there's something better. This is actually kind of interesting. I don't mind this. We don't have a lot of artifact creatures, though. I mean... Actually, how many creatures? There's not a lot of creatures in general. There's 18. And a couple of them are... I mean, they're creatures, but functionally we're trying to use them for other things. Actually... Yeah, like, I'm trying to think, like, what else is there we're trying... This is the kind of issue I ran into with Golbez, though. And not being a knight is a weird move. I'm going to take y'all's word for it. Uh, I'm. I mean, it looks like a knight, but I don't know. I don't remember the character at all. Uh, hmm. Maybe play an artifact you can surveil. So I'm trying to think like, would we benefit from? How do we benefit from other stuff being in the graveyard, right? And then this doesn't help because delirium we would have mostly artifacts and creatures, so that we probably almost never hit delirium. We're not going to do throne because we don't have enough different creature types. Yeah, there's not a lot really to be excited about here that are artifacts and creatures we could play that actually do something. I mean, Sir Ginger is a reasonable early play, but like, yeah, I think the problem. This is again, we're back to kind of where I was thinking before with Golbez. Like, it's a subpar card that needs a lot of work. Is the problem, right? The issue really, and we're just to talk about the card for a second because there's a lot of new players that are probably wondering like, why am I not seeing more of this card? At a 1/4, while it does block a lot of things, it doesn't really kill a lot of things. So your opponent's going to get to just keep attacking kind of indiscriminately into this card. It does help fill up the graveyard, assuming you're playing a fair amount of artifacts. Returning stuff to your hand is neat, but it's not that exciting, right? Because you still have to cast it the next turn or whatever. If you control 4 more return target, and it has to return only a creature. It doesn't return just any artifact. So unless really we have Oil Deep Gear Hulk, because another Golbez Vein in the graveyard doesn't do anything for us, right? Because it's legendary. So we have to be returning either the Gear Hulk, of which we only have 2, or the Flesh Gorgers. And even then, we're likely playing a 3/3 Flesh Gorger because you're not often going to be at 7 mana, right? Because we don't have any. Well, that's not true. We have one thing that can help us reduce costs on stuff effectively. Yeah, I don't know. I almost would rather play Golbez in a deck that's trying to make like treasures or clues or whatever that happens to also be a creature deck. So then I'm like cycling through some reasonable creatures out of the graveyard back to my hand while producing treasure or food or whatever the other thing is for that matter. And then being able to take advantage of that or get stuff back into play or like Golbez, and I'm not saying this is the build for it. You'd have to build a whole different deck. But is it Scavenger's Talent? Yeah. Because then you're at least making food when stuff dies, and then Golbez triggers, you're putting stuff in the graveyard. And then you can sacrifice the food or other artifacts or whatever to get things back from your graveyard onto the battlefield, right? And then that's a little more efficient instead of just like, I have to get it in my hand and then I have to cast it. And that's kind of another reason I'd rather want more creature. Hell, I'd rather just play more Gear Hulks than play even Everflowing Well in here, to be honest. Just what you get from it is, 4/4 that's hard to kill. It has lifelink. You could possibly manipulate your hand on your opponent's hand, whatever's necessary. I would rather have those. Because while we're filling the graveyard, we're kind of filling it with nothing worth getting back. I think is the problem. Because, like, right now, Golbez doesn't have anything worth targeting except for really just 6 creatures. There's not even good utility creatures that are in the battlefield. Like, you're probably going to be winning more often just doing synthesizer things. And even then, we're not even a great synthesizer deck because we're playing all of these really low-cost things, right? And none of those trigger a synthesizer. And that's why I'm saying I might aim for a deck or a build that's doing more with treasure or food or maps or whatever the case is, just artifact tokens, because those all trigger Golbez as well. It's just when an artifact enters and then doing something with stuff in the graveyard. I think that's probably where I would be, because right now, the more I'm staring at this feels like a few different decks in one. Like, it's trying to be a synthesizer deck with like the repurposing bay and all that. which I do get, being able to play to get something with the repurposing bay, use that to go another way to go search for a synthesizer. But it's not a great synthesizer deck, right? It's somewhat of an aggressive deck with like the Bobble, the Siren, Wicker Folk, but we don't have a way to really pump our creatures or be truly aggressive because those are just like one power creatures. Hell, Golbez is also a one power creature, right? So it's not even really being an aggressive deck. It's not particularly a great Golbez deck because, again, like we talked about, we don't really even have anything worth returning except for Gear Hulk, and we're only playing a couple, right? So I would kind of re-envision what the deck's trying to do, right? If we're truly trying to be a Golbez deck, then we should be playing reasonable quality creatures that are worth returning and things that are just making a bunch of artifacts. So that way we can just guarantee get stuff returned or whatever more frequently. Hey, thanks for that. But yeah, like Everflowing Well, it's a cute card, but I rarely see it do anything when it's played across from me. Nothing, and that's the thing, like, and this is a tough thing too, because nothing in this deck is particularly bad, right? They're all reasonable cards. I think they're all just trying to do different things. Like, I would be more inclined to play, let's say, like, Wreckage Wickerfolk if I was playing some aggressive black something deck that's trying to come over the top or whatever, you know. Or, I mean, the Surveil matters. Maybe I'm trying to fill up a graveyard and do some stuff. But yeah, I don't know. There's a lot of things here that just don't feel like they're going to completely work together. And I see too many situations where, okay, you got Synthesizer, but you drew this part of the deck, right? So you're like, all right, well, they don't really do much of anything unless you hit one of your upper cards, and you don't have that many of them, to really trigger the Synthesizer. So stuff like that, I think, could just be roadblocks. So yeah, I would probably re-envision what the deck's trying to be. Or maybe even you're playing some other deck that happens to be an aggressive deck that has artifacts or whatever, and you just play 2 or 3 copies of Golbez, right? Because right now it's like playing 4 of, you kind of wanted to make a Golbez deck, but we ended up kind of being part of 3 different decks and not doing any of them particularly well. So that's kind of my assessment. I think if you were to work on this, we'd probably have to, I would start completely over, figure out how we're really using the graveyard, how we're manipulating it. I mean, hell, to be honest, maybe you're playing Golbez with some artifact stuff and some Reanimator spells, right? And getting back some of the big artifact creatures, whether that's Gear Hulks or Flesh Gorgers or whatever, more frequently, right? Even that would make sense because then you're still surveilling and putting all that stuff in the yard, building the graveyard so you have targets to get something. I think that could be a thing. Would Golbez deal life loss of the full cost or of the reduced cost of the Flesh Gorger? I believe it would be 7. Like, you just get the full cost of it. Because Golbez doesn't care, it just looks at the overall cost when it's in the graveyard. Yep, you would think playing 3 decks in 1 is value. It is actually not. Some Edict creatures in Standard. That's true. We do have a couple, actually. Not artifacts, though. We have the Vampire. You can pay the 1 black kicker, and your opponent sacrifices a creature, or each player sacrifices a creature. There's also the white one that you can pay. This guy. It's like this guy, each player sacrifices a creature, and then there's this guy. If it was kicked, target player sacrifices a creature. So you do have some of those options available if you want them. Those cards do exist. But all right, let me see who is next in the queue. By the way, if you just got here and you want to have your deck looked at and let us talk about it, we're going to put the Discord link again. You go into the standard section of the Discord and then post the deck hosted link so we can get that and we can get you next up in the queue. Hey, it looks like multiple people are strolling here. Thank you so much. All right, so we have Big Mish is going to be next up. Put that in there. And then we have God's Hammer WP. You will be next up. So you are on deck, as they say. in the sports world. Really, they only say that in baseball, but you know. I don't know. Does any other sport use on deck? We use that phrase so much, but I think it is only for baseball. I don't think I've ever. I don't know of anything else where. Oh, that's not true. That's not true. In track and field, we would like if you were doing long jump and somebody was up participating, you're next. That you would be on deck. So we have used it there. All right, let me export this list. We will copy to clipboard and let's see what we've got here. All right. Import 3. Did we have all the cards for this one already? We do. All right, what are we working on here? This looks like we're at a semi-control type pile. Oh, there's a lot happening here. This one's going to have a lot to digest. So hang tight with this one. This was gonna take a second. All right, so we have Storm Chaser's Talent. Only 3. Interesting. Not a full set of 4. Llanowar Elf. Same thing on the Chocobo. We're only playing 3 and not 4. A little peculiar. Also an Up the Beanstalk. And Profs. Wow, okay. There are a lot of questions here. Okay. And then Tatiova, whenever a land you control enters, you draw a card. Okay. Okay, so with Storm Chaser's Talent, I mean, obviously, if we get way late, yeah, there's this town situation. But this doesn't, like your Otter, you don't have that many non-creature spells, really. Not that you want to play proactively or whatever, right? I mean, how many lands are we playing? We have 12, let's see, just a quick check. So we have 24. So we're not playing a particularly large amount of lands, nor a way to play extra lands. So the Chocobos, Yeah, again, I think this feels like multiple different decks trying to masquerade around in the same trench coat. Like, there's Up the Beanstalk, but a big chunk of the deck costs under 5. We're only playing, what is that? 11, 12 cards that cost more than 5 in the deck. Everything else is 4 or less. So this won't really trigger that often. And is this our only extra? I mean, technically, late in the game, Tatiova can draw extra cards. But realistically, Beanstalk's the only real way we're drawing cards for the majority of the game. So Profs won't be adding a lot of cards. Or a lot of counters. Yeah, I think we have a lot happening here. So we're trying to do landfall card draw stuff. But the initial build goal was draw my whole deck into your hand. Well, that's just going to be hard to do in general because your opponents are not going to give you time to do that. He's going to be the biggest problem here. Obviously, Aetherize can help. Not a bad card. Oof. If that's what you're wanting to do, I would just be focusing more on the landfall stuff. Like, the 2-mana section almost feels like it doesn't even belong here. Like, don't get me wrong, Up the Beanstalk's a good card, and there's a little bit of utility here. But unless you get an Overlord of the Hauntwoods early, we're not getting a ton of value off this card. I would rather it be something else. I'd probably get rid of the Storm Chaser's Talent. Go heavier on things that either get you land or care about landfall to make some of this matter a bit more. Maybe something that lets you play an extra land. Because the other problem is, the reason you don't see a lot of Tatiova played is Tatiova's just fragile. Right? Like, you spend 5 mana for a 3/3. You probably get one trigger, assuming you play it on, like, turn 6, so you actually can play a land and get the landfall trigger. You know, gain life, get a card. But it dies to the majority of the removal people are playing, and that's tough for a 5-mana spell. right? If you play your Overlord of Hauntwoods, okay, they're not going to burn it out easy. They have to have just like a hard removal for it. You know, I get that these are here. I see them, what we're doing, but we only have one card that cares about the landfall stuff is the problem. Right? So you technically have landfall things, but no things that care about landfall. You have 3 copies. I don't know why we don't have a 4th if this was the game plan. But you only have 3 copies of the thing to begin with, and then your 5 mana thing. So there's a big chunk of the middle of the game where those lands coming into play don't do anything other than just search for a land, right? That's what I'm getting at. Like, those don't help the Storm Chaser's talent. Those don't help Proph's Eidetic Memory. Those don't do anything with Beanstalk. Like, these cards, I would just replace with more things that care about the landfall triggers, is what I'm saying. Because you're playing 8 cards that go fetch on top of your regular lands. So I would place. I mean, even if they're like Bristly Bill, you know, whatever the case is, right? Just other things that care about having more lands and upping your Chocobo count. And then maybe just having a late game situation of, okay, creatures got dealt with, whatever, then we try to recover with Tatiova later. I mean, it's an option. I'm not saying it's the best option, but it's an option. Aren't there lands that tap for colorless and search for land or find those that are better in landfall decks? There might be, honestly. But again, right now, if we're saying this is a landfall deck, we really only have 3 cards that are benefiting from landfall until way later. And the other problem you have here is that your opponent has no threats they have to deal with for several turns in this deck. And I don't think people think about that sometimes. Because let's say you do get 2 of these early, right? Whether it's an elf and a chocobo or the token from the Storm Chaser talent, whatever. You really don't have anything else until turn 5 or 6 or whatever, right? When you play Tatiova. So they can just sit on removal. They probably get rid of the chocobo, and then you have a Llanowar Elf. And if I have a Go for the Throat or something, or Lightning Strike or whatever, I'll just wait till the other better threat shows up. And then that's the problem that follows up is there's no real threats, right? You have some little creatures, and we're not even counting Llanowar Elf as a threat, right? Because it's there for function, not for fighting. Even though it does have 2 swords. A little bit misleading. You're going to have a 1/1 that doesn't, in most cases, do anything, right? Because we don't have a lot of spells to play. So it's often going to be a 1/1. Maybe a 2/2 or something, right? From Proph's Eidetic Memory. And then you have the Chocobo that realistically could grow and be a real threat. But there's really nothing else. I mean, the deck, we only even have 15 creatures. That's going to be difficult to win with landfall and creatures as your game plan. I don't mind Aetherize because that can buy you time. Obviously good against the Izzet decks, picking up other tokens they've made from the artifact or whatever, right? Love that. But yeah, I think the Storm Chaser's talent, Proph's Eidetic Memory, up the Beanstalk, which at that point, then also probably this town, probably need to go. And then swap up a full set of Chocobo, probably play some Bristly Bill, some other combination of things that either like search land, put lands into play. Maybe the big dragon, right, that search for 2 forests, something like that is an option. Meringue River Regent, that's a good card to have for late. It can also draw you extra cards, which isn't terrible. Those are reasonable threats on their own that could be good. And then probably, you know, keep these if you want to do the late game thing. So for me, I would do this. Let's cut these. Let's cut these. Let's cut this. I'm not going to mess with the mana right now because that's a whole project once you play the deck and figure it out a little bit. So we have Aetherize. Let's go ahead and put another one of these. Oh, man, this is so much. This is the other reason. I like just doing this because I can just click a thing instead of having to, like, double-click options to make stuff work. I hate that it does this, too, and splits my cards. And then let's go Bristly Bill for at least 3. Creature type dragon. So we could ramp up also to get us to Tatiova faster, if that's what we're trying to do. And then a couple of meringues, so that helps our mana situation a little bit. Also, technically, you can ramp with Archdruid's Charm, if necessary. What else would we want to do here? It's probably close. We don't have a lot of 2-mana things. I feel like there's something else in the 2-mana slot we could play. I don't know what it would be. No, I'm probably not playing Tifa in this build because we can't pump it enough. But something else in the 2-mana slot probably goes here. Hey, Just Fab, how's it going? Good evening, GeoCaden. How's it going? But yeah, something else. It's probably a 2-mana thing of some, or maybe something just makes me. Actually, you know what? You know what? If you're gonna do this, you have two choices. Either Keen-Eyed Curator, I think, is a reasonable answer. 2-mana, 3/3, can remove stuff from the graveyard, or Paleontologist. I think is the other option. Because then this gives you a main deck way to deal with the graveyard-based decks, right? Whether it's Reanimator or Omniscience or whatever, right? This gives you choices to deal with those. So either of those, I think, are reasonable options to play. And then I'd probably, I don't know, maybe cut one Charm. But it is a fight spell, so like maybe not. But just streamline the deck a little bit. But also, if you play Paleontologist, it does give you a way to cast your bigger cards a little more consistently if you need to. But yeah, either way, something like that. I would play either of those in the 2-mana slot to kind of fill things out. And then actually reduce the number of islands in your mana base. Because if you have 27 cards that need green pips and only 9 that need blue pips, you don't need an equal number of islands and forests. You need to hit turn 1 forests to unlock things more often. So I would probably make it something closer to that. Especially considering you have so many Evolving Wilds Fable Passage that you're probably going to be playing on turn 1. You'd like to be able to play a forest on 1, get either of these down, and then play one of these on turn 2 versus the other way around, right? Is probably where you want to be. But yeah, something of that nature can get you to a better spot, I think. I think that could be closer to where you want it to be. But yeah, because before, like I said, we were looking at another situation where it's a couple of different decks sort of jammed together, and they weren't giving you the best of either world. I could see too many games where you're gonna get, the Beanstalk and then nothing triggering the Beanstalk, or you're gonna get all your Evolving Wilds Fable passages and then have cards that don't even care about the landfall, right? So you didn't get any advantage from it. So this feels a bit better. I'm not totally sold on Tatiova, but I get that you want to play it, and that's one of the reasons you built the deck, so I'm going to leave it in there and let it ride. All right. Next up, I believe we said it was God's Hammer is next up. Again, if you just joined us, we will go ahead and give you the Discord link one more time. I say one more. I'll probably do it again at some point. Scavenging Ooze, not bad. It's a reasonable option. It doesn't help you ramp up, but it's not a bad option. The reason I like the other two options is colorless to activate is very good, so you don't have to worry about what mana's left up or whatever. Also, the Keen-Eyed Curator, when it becomes a 7/7, also has Trample, which is pretty good against like the low to the ground red decks or whatever, which is another reason I like that card. Not saying Scavenging Ooze is bad. It's a totally reasonable Magic card to play. It just has different restrictions than the other card. And then, of course, Paleontologist also ramps you up to being able to play your other big things, which is another reason I like that card. All right, so going in here, we have Someone 74 is going to be on deck here. And then we've got the Mega Assassin, I believe is what that says. You will be the next person after that. Then anybody after that, I think, is going to have to skip the line with either a super chat or a bits donation. All right. Let's take a look at a deck from God's Hammer and see what you're working with. These have been some pretty interesting decks so far today. So good job to y'all as a community, because we have had some where there's a lot where, like, guys, it's just a regular deck or whatever. People are at least doing the right thing today. So it's always cool to see that. All right, let's grab this deck list from the Mox Field and let's see what we're working with. 'Cause that's the fun part. I never know what y'all are bringing. A Bounce Mill deck, it says. Okay. Let's see what we got. So we have 3 steps ahead. Unsummon. Okay, we have some bounce stuff. Return target non-land permanents. It does surveil if you control a desert. I don't think we're going to be playing too many deserts here. Prophecytic Memory, Beanstalk. Yeah, I mean, sure. Combat Tutorial is an interesting one. Target player draws 2 cards and you put a counter on up to 1 target creature you control. Since we're not playing that many creatures, wouldn't you rather just play, what is the one we're playing in all the other decks? The look at 5 cards or whatever, put 2 into your hand. Why can I not remember the name of it? It's a sorcery. Y'all know the one I'm talking about. Yeah, stock up. There you go. Thanks, chat. Yeah, just play stock up instead of this thing. Like, putting 1 counter on something isn't... It's whatever. You know what I mean? Like, it's... You're drawing 2 cards, or you can just get the value. Like, stock up is just, honestly, just makes a bunch of other cards obsolete. Because you're going to get 2 cards either way, but you get the best 2 of the top 5. You know what I mean? Versus just, I get the random 2 cards off the top. I would much rather have stock up. Because, literally, I don't even know, how many creatures are we even playing? We have 2 Haunt Woods. I guess, technically, we could copy one if we have one. Leviathan and Prime Speaker, but yeah, it doesn't really matter. It's the greatest power. Why are we playing Prime Speaker in here? Like, I'm genuinely confused. Like, Prime Speaker, it's a 6-mana card that doesn't really do anything unless we're already ahead with something else on the battlefield, right? Why not just play, like, the big snake guy if we're going to do that? Oh, is that dude not a snake? What is that guy? Like the dude that's like a 8/12 or whatever? Let's put power equal to 8. Because I'm pretty sure that's what it is, right? This thing. Oh, it's a serpent. All right, it's a snake. Whatever. But yeah, I would just rather play this. Like, yeah, I'd rather... This just makes way more sense. Like, I just get an 8/12 and I can try to start ending the game. Like, I can't imagine a situation... Like, Screw's Roots let you search for 2 basic lands and or gates. I mean, that's fine. I don't hate that. 2, 4, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. Yeah, this is another one. We don't have a lot of triggers for Beanstalk. I mean, we have a few. You can plot something so you get to play it cheap, so that helps. I do think Leviathan's a cool, interesting addition if we can... Honestly, instead of playing, like, Beanstalk and Prophecytic Memory, I would rather play ramp spells there. Even with Spelunking, like, while it gets an extra card, I'd rather just get to where you can just be like, alright, we're going to make our own luck, hope to hit a Leviathan, and then Leviathan the next turn. You know what I mean? Because, like, that feels like that should be the goal here, right? We're spend the first couple of turns just, like, bouncing some opponent stuff, keep them from doing a thing. Alright, I ramp up on 3 or 4, and then I hit them with whatever big thing is that I have. Right? Whether it's Season of Weaving to bounce their stuff or whatever. Or just a big Leviathan, and then I have the 6/6 while I have nothing. It's sort of what it feels like that I should be. Yep, Fenrir's probably reasonable. I could go for that too. That helps you ramp up and gives you a blocker. If an opponent would mill 1 or more cards. Oh, I just realized. I forgot this even says mill. What are we milling with? Like, this says bounce mill. I was thinking it was just a bounce control, try to finish him with a big thing deck. Like, yeah, these water crystals are just hanging out, doing nothing. I mean, technically, they make your 5 of your cards cost less or whatever, 6 of them that matter. But yeah, I don't even think we need this. Like, When are we, like, if we're in a situation where we have 6 mana left over to spend to make the opponent mill like 4 cards or something, we're probably already winning. Yeah, we just don't need this card in the deck. It's not doing any real work. So I would scrap that. I get Beanstalk, so I don't want to harm Beanstalk too much here. Stock Up, I think, has more value. I don't think any of us are going to really argue that. So at least 3 Stock Up. Spelunking does get a card. I don't know how many tap lands we really have. Not very many. So it's mostly here just to draw us a card, basically, right? I mean, pseudo ramp if we have another land in hand. We could play another land, obviously, but how badly do you want Spelunking? I'd rather just have this be a true ramp spell. Like, again, maybe we just play the dragon here too, right? And just go search for 2 forests, because we'll guaranteed to get a forest into play and have another land for the following turn. So I would rather do that. I think I would rather do that than play Spelunking here. And you at least have a dragon that could gain life and block some stuff later if necessary. So yeah, like, I don't know, maybe 3 copies or something. That could work. Then what are we doing? Leviathans. Yeah, I'd cut Prime Speaker. I don't think that's the card we're looking for here. We don't, because we're just not likely to have much on the battlefield. I mean, you're going to be playing it a bunch of mana to draw 1 card and have like a 2/2 on the battlefield. Or I guess technically you'll have a 2/2, so you draw 2 cards, I guess. But that's not really worth it at the end of the day, honestly. Let's see. Creature types. Kraken, Leviathan, Merfolk, Octopus. Serpent. Oh, technically, if you... The other dude is a serpent. We just discovered that, right? Goma's actually a serpent, so why not? Get your butt in there. Like, maybe it's a thing? I don't know. Do I ever run drafts? Almost never. You want to see something that makes people complain about my account? 31 draft tokens, 2 sealed tokens, 7 jump in tokens. I literally have drafted 1 time in the last, hell, paper or digital. I've drafted 1 time, I think, in the last some number of years. And that's because it was recently for a charity thing that I was helping run an event for. Why are we running enchantments when instants and sorceries can do the same thing? You know, that's kind of like, I don't mind it when you're talking about, say, like Beanstalk, because again, you know, there's some long-term value there. I don't have a problem with it. The rest of these, like Leviathan, is you get a 6/6 to attack with that's Ward 2, and you return all your opponent's stuff. So, I mean, technically it's an enchantment, but it's also a creature. How do you get your deck review help? We're at the point now where if you want to get in, you're going to have to extend the stream and skip the line. So it's going to be at least a $3 super chat or bits donation because the queue is full currently. So if anybody else wants in, you got to skip the line. Yeah, so this is probably where I would be starting. I'm trying to figure out what to do with the last couple of cards in here, though. And maybe they're just counter spells. Like, I don't know, maybe. Oh, if you're doing bounce stuff, we were just looking at a card a second ago. The 4-mana thing we were just talking about. Where'd it go? Where'd it go? Not that. This, Aetherize. We can just play a couple of those. Because that fits the whole theme, right? Now you have some counters. You have technically 10 bounce spells. You still have Up the Beanstalk for your later game stuff. Stock Up to help you find problem things. You have Heap Harvest and Bloomvine Regent to ramp with. Circuitous Roots, a 4-mana ramp spell. I guess that's fine. Overlord of Hauntwood. Actually, you know what? I would cut this and play another Overlord, actually. Gives you another body and another way to ramp. Also something to draw with on Beanstalk if you get that on too. And then Make Your Own Luck, which could hit Season of Weaving, whatever, any of this other stuff. The land looks like a little bit of a mess to me. There's a lot of tap lands here. I mean, I know previously you had Spelunking or whatever, but these don't feel like they have a lot of value. This isn't terrible because just 2 mana to draw a card. Hidden Nursery to discover, probably not. I'd rather just have more untapped land. I would just play more Botanical Sanctums, more, whatever. The 1 damage land, probably some Verges. I would just get a cleaner mana base in general. I would swap a lot of it up. Yeah, but this is where I'd probably be. Something like this. Floodmaw over Unsummon, maybe. I mean, this does let you target your own things, which sometimes is nice. Especially if you have like a Bloomvine Regent, you can save it and gain 3 more life or something. I don't mind that. And we do have other stuff that can already return other permanents. But if you wanted to play Floodmaw, I wouldn't complain about it. I think it's fine either way. I think Floodmaw is a totally reasonable card if people wanted to play it. Because most of the time you're going to target your opponent's stuff anyway. It just gives you the option to get rid of other problematic things. Yeah, that's literally it. If you skip the line, it's just you make the super chat or bits donation, and then you just follow up, go to the Discord, put your link to your deck, all that good stuff. In the standard section of the Discord. Next up, currently, was that God's Hammer? So we're on some 174. And then unless somebody skips the line, next will be Mega Assassin, and that will be the last one we have. All right, so let's see what we've got here. What are we working with? This says Golgoria World. I don't know what that means. So let's find out. Y'all have all kinds of names for y'all's decks. I don't even remember the last time I actually named a deck that wasn't something just obvious. All right, where are we at here? I'm assuming this is Golgari something, and it is. Okay, what are we trying to do here? So we have Commune with Beavers to help us find things. Grand Pulse Ochu. Death Touch, pay 8 until it turns creature gets plus and plus for each permanent in your graveyard. I mean, that's a card. Is this particularly just trying to use Final Fantasy cards? I just realized this. Like, is that like the sub-theme going on here? Because if it is, I feel like we're just pushing it for the sake of pushing it, but we're not making the deck better because of it. Your Friend's House Company. Great Color Magic episode. Oh, thanks so much. Too bad the pain lines are about to rotate, but there's argument for shock lands coming up. That's true. Okay. So you're wanting to keep this with strictly Final Fantasy cards. Oh, boy. Goodness. This is going to make this much harder to do. Because here's the problem. You're literally just hamstringing yourself for no significant benefit. Like, there are simply just cards that are going to be better than what you're playing that just aren't from this set. Boy. Put them in the rest in your graveyard. And this is a sorcery. This, when it dies, create a treasure. Yeah, because even with mice, there's the mouse that's like a 1, or the rat that's like a 1/1. It like mills 2 cards on a player. Then when it dies, it gives something -1/-1. Just, all right. Let's see what we could do. I'm gonna try to help you out as best I can, but I'm not sold that this is the best way we should be going about this. All right, so we want to play X Death, right? When it enters, you gain 3 at the beginning of your step. There are 6 more permanents in your graveyard. Transform it. Parent toughness is equal to the number of permanents in your graveyard. I mean, the true issue is, and I think we played this deck the other day. Like, the problem is this is already a deck that exists, and there's just a better version. Like this. Like, this deck is already a thing. I mean, it's playing Gnawing Vermin that can put stuff in your graveyard. It's playing Robot Maverick that surveils, puts stuff in the graveyard. Souls of the Lost, which is just a bigger body because of things in your graveyard. Like, you get the advantage of up the beanstalk because you're playing so many things that get reduced cost. Obviously, like, Overlord's really good. Still getting to play Diamond Weapon. I think we played one each of Fang and Vanille, just in case we were able to get them out of the graveyard and do something. But yeah, ultimately, this deck already exists. Like, some version of this, plus or minus 4 or 5 cards, you know, season to taste, is pretty much a known deck already. So if I was going to do it, I would say just look at my video from one of the ones we did from 2 weeks ago. And this is probably going to be pretty close to what you want to play. I mean, and really, I think the only thing that's rotating out of this, like, Overwhelming Remorse, but it's a common. Maybe Vermin, but it's an uncommon. Yeah, I don't think much really gets touched in this deck. Anything else you're crafting that's a rare is still standard legal for a while. So yeah, I would probably just go with something like this. This deck is knowing to go against. Yeah, it's a good deck. And it has endless giant monsters as the game goes on. So yeah, something of this variety is probably what I would go with. I don't know what the exact number. And again, you could cut some number of Vanille or Fang and play more Scavenging Ooze to give you advantages against the graveyard-based decks. You know, you could play some more spot removal if you're worried about the hyper aggro things. So there's controls you can move around to meet metagame considerations. But generally, some version of this is going to be your best bet. Like, I get what you're trying to do, totally. I don't think, like, the idea was bad. It's just, there's other cards that exist to just do what that's trying to do better, sadly. Alrighty, let's see. We've got... Just double checking, making sure everything's still good. Jets, you make the donation on the appropriate thing. So if you're on Twitch, you donate like a minimum of 300 bits. If you're on YouTube, you hit the button to leave a super chat and leave the equivalent of like $2.99 or more if you're just being generous. But yeah, that doesn't happen in the Discord. You just leave your deck list on the Discord. All right, so what do we got here? We have another Golgari list, it says. So let's take a look at this. Oh, it's Golgari Squirrels. Oh, man. I feel like I get to be the bearer of bad news on Squirrels. I've tried a few different Squirrels decks, and ultimately, Squirrels are better off just being a handful of Squirrels and just other stuff, because a bunch of the Squirrels suck. I mean, that's no nice way to put it. A bunch of them are not good. For starters, I would just max out the Scavenger's talent if we're going to play this deck. But yeah, like Baker's Bane Duo, this card's just not good. I mean, there's a bunch of other things I'd rather play at 2 or 3 mana than that card. Bushy Bodyguard. When it enters, you can forge. If you do, put 2 counters on it. Yeah, also not great. This guy's hit or miss, kind of okay. The problem with Osteomancer is I realized I wasn't playing that many things from the graveyard with this card. And I think it was just because we just don't have that many quality things. Like, the Forager's fine. It adds mana for you to do stuff. Obviously, Mentor is actually reasonable. You play a full set of those. But everything else is just kind of like... It's alright. Like, Paw Patch Formation's a decent card. Cash Grab's not bad. But it's just kind of like, what should we be doing to take advantage of the food or producing more food? I would say probably go with something... What's that guy? It's like a beast that produces food. The 5/5? Oh, maybe it's not a beast. Oh, I know how to find it. I'll just put create 2 food. Where are we at? Where are you at? Did that not bring it up either? Dang it. Oh, it's probably because it uses the word too, right? Yeah, okay. Bristlebud Farmer. There we go. This guy. At least this gives the deck something scary your opponent has to deal with. Because, like, Honor Draylater is actually reasonable if you already have a bunch of stuff out. But if you just, your first thing got killed, second thing got killed, and you play this, it's just like, all right, I just have this dude. Is going wide and into the game with Camellia not realistic? Not often, honestly. Because part of your problem is Camellia has to survive, first off, right? To even get to use the ability. And then the other question is, how wide are you? Where are you able to go wide? You know what I mean? Like, it's not like we have a bunch of good 1 and 2 mana things. So it's like, where are we going wide before we get to Camilla? That's the reason. Like, and I'm with you. I thought the same thing when we saw Squirrels previewed. Well, at this point, over a year ago or whatever, right? There was like this idea of like, oh, okay, well, I'll just play the Squirrels, and then I'll get Camilla, and then they'll get bonuses, and then it'll do its thing. And it literally just never worked out like that. Like, I don't know what to say. It just 100% doesn't work like that ever. And if you think about it, the more you start playing it, it makes sense, right? Because you have like, okay, I have Osteomancer Adept, but what's it really doing? It's just a 2/2 Death Touch guy most of the time, right? Same thing with Forager. Like, it's fine, it's a 2/2, but it's really just helping me add mana to do other things, right? It's just a ramp spell guy that could be almost anything. So we're not really going wide because we're not even producing other squirrels. Which is funny because the old Magic cards that make squirrels make a bunch of 1/1 squirrels, right? We didn't really get those cards that do this thing, make a squirrel. Crack a food, make a 1/1 token, or whatever. So really, the squirrels end up getting played most of the time are just like Vine Reap Mentor and 1 or 2 copies of Osteomancer Adept. And then nobody really plays with the other squirrels because they just don't do much. Which is kind of sad. That's why I said as soon as I saw it, I'm like, I already know where this is going. But at least if you play like Scavenger Talent, maybe you can take advantage of the food. You could also swap other cards and try playing things like create token, food, creature. The 2/2 green guy that when it comes in the battlefield also makes a food, and you can turn food into 4/4s. Like, you can play Tough Cookie. Works with this deck kind of just the same. Yeah, even the one with Offspring, it's not great. It's fine. Like, yeah. So something like this still is reasonable because then you can turn the food into creatures and fight with 4/4s, which is a thing. There's also, you can sacrifice artifact draw if you want to do that. So Fanatical Offering is also good. So you can sacrifice one of the food to draw a couple of cards. So that's a thing. And you create a map. It's like, that's something. The best artifact removal in these colors, there's a bunch. Green removes artifacts. So you can just destroy artifacts. I mean, you're also playing Paw Path Formation, which I think gets rid of enchantments, right? Yeah. So, I mean, green has options. Like, you could play District Mascot. You could play Insidious Fungus, which you just sacrifice to get rid of a thing. There's Heritage Reclamation if you want to play this over Paw Patch Recruit, because it's also removes stuff from graveyards. So if your opponent goes to target, like, I don't know, Omniscience, you can get rid of that before they can get it on the battlefield. Matter of fact, I'd probably even just do that anyway. While creating food is nice, like, I would just do that anyway, just for metagame considerations and still be able to get rid of artifacts. But yeah, there's a lot of choices. I mean, you have a pile, like Scrap Shooter, if you just want a sizable body, you just give them a card, destroy an artifact, enchantment. Yeah, you have tons of choices. You even have Exile Artifact in these colors. You also get, I always forget the name of it. Wait, is that not? Why is that not showing up here? Wait. No. Oh, that's why. It did that silly thing. Yeah, alright, this makes more sense. this Terra Sunder is also an option because you can pay the kicker and just get rid of a creature as well, or just a permanent. It doesn't have to be anything particular. So you could use this as well, and it's also an uncommon. I mean, basically, the good options are mostly commons and uncommons anyway, so you have a lot of choices. This is what I'm saying. Or you could even go Tranquil Frillback. While it's a rare, it does actually enter the battlefield, get rid of artifact or enchantment, can also get rid of graveyards, right? So green gives you a lot of choices to get rid of artifacts. You just kind of got to pick what works best for the deck that you're playing or trying to build. But yeah, at the end of the day, I think really instead of trying to go so hard on squirrels, you almost just have to focus more on what you're doing with food and then just make a food deck that happens to have some squirrel stuff. Really, I think is your best play. Matter of fact, I have one I was messing around with earlier today that we haven't turned into a video yet. But yeah, it's just I have Scavenger's Talent, I have Tough Cookie, I have Vine Reap Mentor, but then the rest of it is just good cards, right? Bristlebud Farmer, Felithar, because I can sack the food to turn into +1/+1s. Quina, because every food also makes a frog. You know, you can sack all those to Bartolome. So, like, we're just doing other stuff. You know, there's just, sadly, so much better things to be doing with that. Yeah, I feel for you, because I think a lot of people wanted squirrels to be good, myself included. Just, unfortunately, just never was a thing. Even from week one. I think if you go all the way back and look at my videos where I made a video the week it released with like, hey, we're going to try to play squirrels. And then my assessment at the end of the video was just, squirrels ain't great. Like, no matter what version we saw, no matter what different creators tried, it just ended up not being good enough, unfortunately. Fallout says, Terra Sunder and Tranquil are great, but they're both rotating soon, so be mindful of that. Yeah, Terra Sunder's an uncommon. Like, if you have an uncommon that rotates, I don't think that's that big of a deal. I think we'll survive with that. I think it's totally okay. Yeah. So let me hop over here into Discord. Double check some things. Oh no, I had a button I shouldn't have hit over there. All right, so it looks like that might be everybody. I think if there's no last second super chats or bits donations to extend the stream, I think we are good. I think we covered everything. Almost 2 hours though. An hour and 45 minutes, so we went through. I guess we'll use this time, if there's no other donations hopping in here, to answer some questions. So if you have any questions about, let's say, MagicCon Vegas that just happened, or Commander Advisory Panel stuff, or even, I don't know, standard related stuff, hit me with it. Let's see. Afrobeat says, MTG Arena got cooked into the Bloomborough. What? They left so many cards out. I don't understand. Bloomborough had a lot of stuff in it. What was left out? Like, I don't know what else. I mean, if anything, the individual, like, creature types could have been further fleshed out, but you also would have had to have made like a 400 and some card set to make that work. I think no matter what you do, it's going to be hard to have everyone, you know, we're talking about birds, mice, squirrels, whatever, you know, all be equally good. You know, frogs, whatever, raccoons. I think there's always just going to be a situation where some of the creature types are going to be full decks, right? And some are just going to be role players in other decks. That's just a thing. And it's always been that way. Like, no matter what we build, no matter what themes are in a set, not every, you know, when they do cycles of cards where every color gets at least one of these things, where there's always one that's going to be worse than the others, right? There's always one or two that are going to be underplayed. And I think it's just kind of the same thing. Would you say this meta is fast, slow, or more mid-range? Before I give an answer, I want to say this is the type of question that I think people get hung up on that doesn't have a crazy amount of value. whether we think it's fast, slow, or not doesn't really change much. What you should be worried about is just targeting decks, right? More than anything else. I think that's the real answer. But if we're saying fast, slow, whatever, it's faster than it is slower, for sure. But I think there's also an argument to be made that there's like 3-ish decks that are fast, and then 1 or 2 that can do like a reanimator combo-y thing or whatever, but that can be disrupted. And then the control decks, right? So I think most people are going to classify it as fast just because those 3 or 4 fast decks make up a large percentage of the decks you're going to run into. I don't think that necessarily all the decks being built need to be fast. I mean, we've shown on our channel, you can win with a lot of decks that aren't particularly fast, but you have to be able to deal with those 3 or 4 big decks that are running around, right? We're talking about the mono red versions, the is it aggro type stuff. So I think that's the biggest issue. But I think in a perfect world, you'll probably see a good chunk of cards on this next banning. I think, and we talked about this, and by the way, you could join the Discord just to be part of the conversation if you want, but we talked about this earlier in the week. I think no matter what, I think we're all agreeing that Rage is going to be on the list. I don't think that's a question. I think the potentially possibles probably end up being something like Manifold Mouse, possibly Omniscience, because that's kind of the next up problem, right? If you get with this, do these other decks become bigger or not? Though there are ways to deal with Omniscience if you don't have to deal with the super aggro decks. So, I mean, that's an argument to be made depending on how R&D views it. You know, I had somebody just yesterday trying to make an argument for stock up because it shows up in so many lists. However, those numbers are also skewed because a lot of the is it aggro decks also play stock up. So if a bunch of those go away, those numbers drop. So we don't even know. And then you have the issue of something like Vivi, right? I'm not even sure Corey Stillcutter is that crazy when stuff like Rage doesn't exist. But we'll find out, depending on if we want to deal with that or not. The other big concern, though, is Vivi or Tenier, right? Because it's a card in the new set. It's a valuable card in the new set. And that always can cause a problem because you don't want people chasing cards on a new thing, especially fans of the set coming over and then the card being banned, whatever. So some of their problem could be, if they don't want to ban Vivi, do we get rid of Rage and stock up or whatever? Because those appear in the decks almost every time that Vivi appears. So you can still play with Vivi, but we're hamstringing the deck a little bit so it's not ridiculous. You know what I mean? That might be the next path. But I think there will be no less than 2 cards on the ban list when we get an announcement in a week or 2 or whatever, a couple weeks. But I think it could be up to 4, depending on how... Honestly, maybe even 5, but I don't think they'll do 5. I think it could be up to 4, realistically. 5 if they're really going to go for it, you know? Which is why if you brew something new, half your deck has to be the same set of meta removal, ramp cards, or draws. I mean, you need cards to do that. I don't know if they need to be the same ones. But no matter what, there's always going to be some set of cards that are better than the other cards, right? Like, it just doesn't matter. We have 3 years of standard that we're playing with at any given time. Some cards are just going to be the best options. You know, like we were talking about earlier. Like, while your deck may do a thing, they're just better cards to do the same thing you're trying to do. So you're just going to play the best cards. Omni has a counter, but if every deck has to run main board, graveyard, poker stuff, we have an issue. Well, sort of. It just depends on how versatile those cards are, right? If you're already just playing a creature deck and you play Scavenging Ooze, all right, and maybe you're also playing a +1/+1 counters deck. Then, like, all right, it's not that bad. It just does that. Plus, don't forget, you're not just targeting Omniscience. There's like 3 different Reanimator style decks running around as well, and those answers work for those. So I don't think it's a bad thing if people do have to play those, because at some point, if everybody does, or not everybody, let's say even half the field does it, eventually people will quit playing those decks, or those numbers will get reduced anyway, and then the momentum shifts, right? So now you have cards that don't do as much because you're not seeing the graveyard decks as much or whatever, because they've gotten somewhat hated out of the environment. The issue right now, though, is you can't really, in some decks, you can't really make the slots to deal with the stuff for the graveyards because you're trying to deal with the hyper aggro decks, right? But if those slow down a little bit or are playing just more reasonable cards, then you can make room for those other things, and now it becomes a balanced thing, and maybe even more mid-range decks start popping up. You know, you will just have to wait and see. Vivi is like Shelly when it first came out. It was a boogeyman. No. I think Shieldred frustrated people. I think everybody admits that Vivi is just a ridiculous card, right? Shieldred had really powerful stats, being a 4/5 death touch, whatever, for 4 mana, yada yada, right? Vivi is 3 cards in one, right? It's a card that puts counters on itself. It's basically a card that gets counters. It's a card that damages your opponent. It's a card that gives you extra mana. All for one spell. Like, think about this. If you play a Rage or even a Wild Ride or whatever for 1 mana, you don't just get the +3, right? You get +3, you get a damage, you get a counter, and you get 4 mana back. Right? Like, it's crazy. No, it's better than a ritual because Vivi puts an additional counter on itself, so you actually get 4 mana back. Right? So it's a much crazier card than Shieldred ever was. And it has a bunch of combo potential, right? Because you can stack up cards, you can draw, you can then copy, keep the new copy, blah, 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 blah. You can play stuff with Agatha Soul Cauldron in the graveyard and then put counters on the other creatures. So now your other creatures have the ability to, you know, for 0, draw cards or make mana. You know, like, so there's way more stuff you can do with it than you could do with Shieldred. Don't be wrong. I think Shieldred was a good card, and it definitely upset people and scared people. Rightfully so. It was a damn strong thing at the time. Still is strong, but not absurd. But Vivi, like, you pretty much get one window to deal with it the turn they play it. And if they have any way to protect it or counter a spell or whatever, you almost can't ever deal with it after that. Because they just get so deep on cards and mana, whatever, they can just do whatever they want. But yeah, Vivi's a crazy Magic card. How would I weight Standard's power, and how does that affect the new player? I don't even, like... Again, it's a question I don't really like, as far as, like, how are we rating the power? Like, what is the scale we're using? Like, if somebody played for a while, I could compare it to maybe some other versions of Standard over the years. But if you're a new player, those references wouldn't matter. If anything, I would just say, for a new player, it's going to be tough until the bannings happen, because you're likely not going to understand how to interact with the hyper aggro decks yet. Nobody's fault, you just haven't played enough to know better yet, right? So for that reason, I would stick to playing in the play queue and not even play the ranked ladder at all. Like, learn your deck, learn the matchups, you know, just figure out how things work. I wouldn't even bother playing the ranked queue right now or trying to play in a tournament. Just learn the game better. That's what I would do. I think there's more value there to just getting better and learning the ins and outs of whatever it is you're trying to play. And then, you know, one of the things I learned from watching an editor, I like the phrase of, don't be afraid to kill your darlings either. You're going to get really attached to something being in a deck or whatever, and if something's just not working, just accept that it's not working and it's not good for the metagame. And you may just have to get rid of it. You know, that's a thing. You just have to play a better card that may not be the thing you want to play, but it might just be the right choice. But generally, that's what I would say. I don't think you really need to even mess around with that right now. But just know that you probably need to be able to deal with... Really, I wouldn't even say that. I would say maybe the overarching lesson is take the time to understand the metagame. Whether that's watching my channel every day, watching anybody, right? Watch creators, get into a Discord, ask questions, just educate yourself. That's going to be the best thing. Because otherwise, you're just running into a minefield that you don't know anything about. And if you watch, even on my videos, it's why I try to over-communicate a lot of times when I'm playing so newer players can understand what's happening. Is that there's a lot of times we're making plays based on what the opponent's deck can have or might do. Sometimes those things don't come up. Like, you see that somewhere. I'm like, I'm going to play this way just in case the opponent has this. And they end up not having the card, right? But if they did have it and I played the other way, we're probably blown out. So that's kind of why we do that and go through those steps. But understand what the other decks you're going to run into, the cards you're going to see. That more than anything helps you so much better at Magic, right? Just knowing what's out there and what to expect. Because otherwise, you're just making plays and your opponent plays something. You're just stunned that thing happen and you're devastated, right? That's what I would say. Let's see. Ophidian says, I think if I were involved in managing the betting, I think I would tackle the Omniscience deck first. I don't. Omniscience is much easier to deal with than the hyper aggro decks are. Because Omniscience still needs setup, right? They have to spend their first 3 or 4 turns cycling through cards, putting stuff in the graveyard, and then they have to have the turn where they try to go for it, right? But in between all that, you could be playing creatures, forcing them to do stuff they don't want to do so they don't get to dig. You could be playing, 1, 2, or 3 cost things that remove stuff from the graveyard, right? And then, that's not even say, there's why you see people playing main deck like Rest in Peace and things like that. Or Strategic Betrayal, right? Opponent sacrifices a creature, exiles their graveyard. Like, lots of cheap options that just cripple their game plan. Not to say they can't find other ways and play the long game or whatever. Now, granted, I don't like Omniscience as a card anyway. It's literally the only card from day one I didn't like being in Foundations. But I do think that's easier to deal with than dealing with hyper aggro decks. The problem, though, is that when the hyper aggro decks are so prevalent, to, in a lot of cases, a 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 ratio of even the Omniscience decks, you can end up with too many dead cards in that matchup, so you can't really do much to the Omniscience deck, right? Because you played all these, let's say, cut downs and various cheap removal, whatever, to deal with their stuff, and you draw 2 or 3 of those in your opening hand, you basically mulligan to 5, right? Because those aren't going to do anything in that matchup. That's the biggest difference. Is it different than being just new to MTG Arena versus long time playing live MTG? I think it depends on what level you play at, right? If you're just playing casual, then anything you run into is going to feel very different. If you've played competitively in the past, once you're aware of all the different decks and the cards or whatever, it'll probably be second nature to you and won't be that big of a deal. Did I bring home any cool stuff from MagicCon? I generally don't bring a lot of things back. One thing about me is I did a poor job of, I guess, keeping keepsakes in the past. So over the last couple of years, and you probably can't see them, they're off camera, but I have a pin board that I usually get at least a button or pin from wherever I was at or whatever show I was at, and I put that up. And then I have a separate rack that has all my lanyards and, credentials and stuff from different events there. And then otherwise, not much, really. I kind of go for an experience more than things. I spend a lot of time talking to people, a lot of time, helping other creators. This time I did a lot. I helped with a charity thing. I had to host a couple of events. We did some meet and greets. So I was kind of all over every day doing different things. I do have a couple of collector's boosters I got, so I may open these on a video soon. Maybe I make a couple of shorts where I crack these. Because I don't know, these things are worth $80 or something now? Like dumb numbers? I don't know. So we might do that. But otherwise, no, I don't think I've really brought much back. I was trying to think, but no, I kind of... Just my basic stuff, and a few things they gave us for helping, a few packs, some sleeves and stuff or whatever, but nothing crazy unique. The other problem is, I don't stand in lines. I really don't. I mostly, especially at a place like that, because there's a lot of other things for me to do other than stand in line for 2 hours. So while there was some neat stuff to be bought at the Square Enix booth that had a line the entire show, the general show store and things like that, I just don't get in a lot of them. I honestly, even getting into the show, unless I have something to do at 10 or 11 o'clock, I don't even show up to get into the first day entry line. I show up at noon when the line's basically almost gone. Right? Because if I don't have to be there, there's no point in me just waiting in line for 2 hours or an hour and a half, and I'm only saving 30 minutes than I would had I just showed up at noon, right? So that's kind of my game. And I do that at restaurants too. Because I live in a spot where there's lots of good places to eat that are, just minutes apart from each other. So if I show up and the wait at a restaurant is more than 15 minutes, I'm just like, nah, I'm good. I'll just go down the street to this other spot. I'm just that way. I've gotten to where I don't know. I just have so many little things I'm doing that efficiency matters to me. So I'd rather, especially at a convention, I'd rather spend my time just having the experience. Because this time there was a lot at MagicCon. There was like an arcade section that had like pinball machines and old arcade cabinets. There were our artists doing tattoos, like real tattoos on people that were Magic themed. Obviously, like all the artists you could meet. There was a bunch of stuff in the creator space. There was gathering grounds. There was like a family area that had stuff. There was a ton of things that went on the stage. That was the whole thing. And that's just on one floor. That's not even going downstairs where all the like vendors were, all the tournament stuff, the pro tour. Like, there's so much to experience and deal with. Like, I wasn't just going to wait around in a line for that. It just doesn't do much for me. Me just having a thing, like, hey, let me address something real quick too. I read yesterday, there was this post on Reddit that the person was super upset. And to be fair to the person, they'd made a very well-written post. But some of the things they complained about, now a couple of things were actually like functionally an issue for the event, right? But there were other things like the con exclusives running out. Like, yeah, that happens literally at every single convention. I haven't been to one convention I can think of where the con exclusives don't run out because they only make like, a couple thousand of the thing. Well, 20,000 people showed up. It's not a lot you can do. I do think there's some things they could have done to make that better, where I think some people would go to, say, like one of the tellers or whatever, and then get back in line and try to end up at a different teller. And they didn't recognize them or whatever. So, I mean, there's some things you can do, like punch people's badges and things like that. I've seen it shows where they'll clip a corner off the badge, things like that, to signify if you've already been through the line or bought something or whatever. So they probably need to do that at a future show. But then there's other stuff, like there was a story where somebody sat down. They wanted to play in one of the collector booster drafts, right? Which I believe the collector booster drafts were like $100. And I think first place was 2 collector booster boxes and second place was like 1 collector booster box, which is crazy. So what happened is people were sitting down and they just looked at each other and said, hey, do y'all agree to just split and we just go home? And everybody's like, great. So they walk up, they get the 2 boxes, everybody doles all their stuff out, plus their 3 packs they were going to draft with. And for $100, they all got, I don't know, like 8x their value or whatever. There was a person who actually wanted to play, and he was just like upset that nobody else wanted to play, which I get it, right? That's a unique situation because of what happened with the collector's boosters of Final Fantasy, right? It's not a normal thing that happens at events. It's not a normal thing that happens at anything. But when you're talking about a product that is nearing $80 to $100 and the entry fee is only $100, well then yeah, like people are just going to try to get their money. Hell, people were signing up for events and just taking their packs and going and selling them to the vendors because you could get $60 a pack. Or at one point, I don't know if they were that much at the end of the weekend, but even if you're getting $50 a pack, when you only paid $100 to get 3 of them, then like, of course, right? Why would you not do that? It just makes sense. So there's a lot of people doing that. And again, this is more human behavior than a Wizards issue or whatever. You can't force people to play their cards. I mean, they could get up and leave, and you can't be like, no, you can't leave, right? They can give you any excuse, like, oh, my wife called, I got to take this call. Like, oh, wait, I have a friend who got hurt, I got to get back to my hotel. Like, whatever. You'd have no way to verify it, right? So there's that issue. You can't really solve that. Also, there's somebody talking about how players were playing the unknown draft, the mystery 2 booster or whatever, and they all were looking at prices of things on their phone and just drafting the most expensive cards. Again, behavior things, you can't really regulate that. That's just people doing what people do at a convention, right? So there's a lot of that type of stuff. But that's also if you're playing the events that are all about value, right? If you were just showing up and playing a regular Final Fantasy play booster draft, those are fine. Those went off without a hitch, right? So if you play a lot of that stuff, you don't really have an issue. That being said, unless you're playing in an event for qualification or some bigger prize, I don't know if I personally would take a lot of time to do that at a convention anyway. I mean, unless I say that, if I lived in a place where a store or a draft situation or whatever format I like was not readily available, and I can go to a place where I can play 2 or 3 events over the weekend, then like, yeah, sure, maybe. But to put it in perspective, I had a friend, I believe he played the modern event that was going on, and then he played a sealed one, I think, on Saturday. And that took up their whole day. Like, I literally didn't see him again until it was time to go meet up for dinner. And I was just thinking, like, you showed up to a thing, you paid $60 plus an entry fee to play the tournament, and that's all you did the whole day. Like, you just missed a whole experience of other things, which is fine, you know. And again, that's what he really wanted to do. He was trying to qualify. So I get it, right? That's a thing. Everybody's got different wants and needs. But it was interesting because I think, because after talking to people, there were a lot of first time convention goers this weekend or this past weekend. And not even first time Magic Con goers, first time convention goers. Because I asked them when they said, I'm like, oh, is this your first Magic Con? They say, yeah. I'm like, have you been to other conventions? And a lot of times they said, no, this is my first one at all. So their expectations of what could happen or should be or whatever don't have a basis in anything yet. So it's probably going to seem even more crazy and egregious to them. You know, but overall, like, considering that Vegas was their biggest show, and I'm hearing numbers over 22K, that's pretty wild, right? We've been doing these events for, what, 3 years now? 4 years? Coming up on 4 years. And there's shows that cover so many different hobbies, things, whatever, that have been running for 10 or 15, 20 years. They don't even get 10,000 people. So to have a game like Magic, which hopefully in the next couple of years, you know, will eventually have movies, TV shows, whatever, you know, not even have that, and on its own accord basically keeps drawing more and more people at every show. Kind of wild. It says a lot, truthfully. But I know somebody who ran some D&D games, and those filled up and had a line waiting to try to play them. You know, they had, I think, like 2,000 seats or something for the main stage now. And those were, I saw several times where if they weren't full, they were like 3/4 full for stuff. The announcements obviously go over big. The cosplay stuff, super popular now. It's just a pile of things, man. It's really, really crazy what we're experiencing right now as a community with Magic. It's kind of off the page. Do you think they go back to Vegas more since they did super successful there? I think that's part of it, but there's also logistics and contracts, and there's a lot of stuff involved. And why I say logistics is ReedPop, who organizes the events in conjunction with Wizard of the Coast. They do a lot of the back end stuff as far as scheduling talent, doing registration, along with Leap is the name of the company they work with. So there's some different people, right? And ReedPop also does a lot of the big, like San Diego Comic-Con, things like that. When you're in certain cities long enough, it makes your job of putting on the event easier, even if you have to get a bigger space or a different part of the convention center, because you know the lay of the land, you know the staff you're working with. You know, it saves you so much time. And when you're that big and you're running multiple things, that's a huge benefit. So that's one of the largest issues. Now the other, and I don't know if this has happened yet for MagicCon because we're just now getting to the big numbers, but cities will pay events to stay in their city because of the revenue you bring in. Now I don't think Magic's necessarily there yet, you know, but could be once you cross over 25, 30,000 people, and that might only be another year and a half, 2 years away. Who knows? But an example recently, if you're a wrestling fan, the city of Las Vegas paid World Wrestling Entertainment, the WWE, a pile of money to host WrestleMania in Vegas again next year. Because for basically the better part of a week, they bring in probably somewhere, if you add all the staff and everything else, probably in total like 100,000 people for the city, right? And when Vegas is already struggling with tourism because of politics and travel and whatever, it is what it is. Anything that can bring that many people is a big deal for them, especially international people. That's the other thing, right? Because a large chunk of Magic was also international folks that came to play on the Pro Tour, people that came to see their favorite creators and stuff, to participate in different events. So that makes a difference too. But yeah, with the attendance being big, it's also West Coast accessible fairly easily. You know, there's a lot of flights that get into Vegas from a lot of major cities, so that helps. Chicago, I think for a long time too, is just it has the largest convention center in the country. I think the McCormick Place is gigantic. The locals even refer to it as the McCormick Mile because it's so damn big to walk through. So I could see that as well. It's Vegas. I think is the second, if I'm not mistaken. So you're working with the biggest convention centers in the world, which also make it easy to plan events, right? You can almost always get space, and then time of year and whatever. There's a lot of other factors, but people also like going to Vegas. I mean, just being real, there's a reason a lot of events happen in Vegas, right? There's always hotels available. There's deals to be had. People, a lot of times, whatever credit cards or whatever you have some type of deal or trip or discounted tickets or hotel rooms in Vegas. So there's a lot of reasons that attendance up in Vegas. What I found interesting, though, is that Atlanta, they're doing this year and next year, they announced. So my guess is whenever ReedPop and Wizards signed on to whatever deal, they probably signed on for a 2-year deal and maybe got a better rate. You never know, depending on what's going on. So that's pretty cool. So we'll see how that works out. But I do like that it's in Atlanta because there are some fans and creators that are more on the East Coast that may not have been easily accessible to Chicago and definitely not Vegas being further out. So having something on the West Coast, I think is pretty solid for them to get to as well. And if you're in the central U.S., getting to Vegas or Atlanta is kind of whatever. Like, the flights are going to be equidistant for the most part. So, chance for everybody to get to the events, and I think that's good. I would have liked to have seen another international one, but obviously that's a whole other amount of logistics, which is why people got mad and said, why are they going back to Amsterdam? It's like, because they know Amsterdam. They were just there 2 years ago. They know how it works. They know the locals. They probably know how to get stuff through customs there easy and whatever, right? Will they venture to other cities? Yeah, I'm pretty sure they will. But it makes sense to, let's go back to Amsterdam. Let's see if the excitement is the same, right? Because the first one, it's the first time you've been in Europe in forever. People are going to show up, right? Now that you were there 2 years ago and you go back, now what's the draw, right? Because it's not the new thing that hasn't happened in a while. If it stays big, then it might be, okay, now we need to maybe, I don't know, put one in Italy or Germany or whatever, right? And then that becomes a thing. You still pray New York gets a MagicCon one year. I would not hold my breath. The issue with New York, and not to say it won't ever happen. I'm not going to say it'll never happen. But the issue with New York is it's generally one of the more expensive venues. That's the first thing. And then as you get, I guess what a lot of people don't know too is, and we experienced this with Grand Prix. People always wondered why Grand Prix had to start charging more when we still had them, is that in my experience, space does not scale. So let's say if you only need space for, I don't know, 5,000 people, I'm just going to make up a number. Let's say you're paying $10 a square foot or whatever it is, right? That's way too high. But you know what I'm saying? If you go to 10,000 people, it's not still 10,000 a square foot. They'll start charging you 12 or 15,000 a square foot, right? And you can imagine in New York, if it's already expensive and you're like, man, we're going to be bringing in 25,000 people. We're going to need a really big hall. I can only imagine what that costs. That being said, I believe ReedPop also does the New York Comic Con. So they would know people. They would have ins. They would know how to make it work if it's feasible. Now, again, I don't know what Watsy's budget is for it. And that's going to be the big deciding factor. But having ReedPop in your corner at least means it's a possibility if it were to ever happen. Yeah, you're better going to Boston instead of New York City. That's probably true. And between the cities, the Northeast has much better subways, trains, everything else to get around. So people can come from neighboring cities fairly easily that way. Plus, to be honest, man, New York airports are not the best. LAX is the worst, but New York airports are not the best. To be fair, New York has the Javits Center and that's it. Yeah, that's true. I mean, you have a lot of stuff for big open events where you're talking about the Javits Center, which I mean obviously is a regular thing, but you have MSG, the Berkeley Center, stuff like that. But I don't know. I mean, I guess Berkeley Center could be set up for an event, but man, so the problem is so many big events use those, whether it's sports teams, car shows, stuff like that, tech things, that they can just pay so much more, so the numbers are so much higher. So I don't know if we'll ever have a Magic thing. I mean, it could happen, but I think we're still a ways away. I think for them to justify doing it in New York, we probably have to consistently be over 30,000 people, maybe even 50,000 to make it worth it. And I don't know if Magic Cons will ever get to 50,000. I think 30,000 is possible, especially if, and again, we're saying 2 years from now, we actually get a Magic movie and the animated series on Netflix, and we're building a bigger fan base. I think 30,000 is in sight, maybe even 35. I don't know if we can get to 50. 50 is a lot. Especially when you put it in perspective, Gen Con, which has, I don't know, what, 40 years of history or something now, and they only have 70,000? Hey, thanks for the super chat. I think it's hard to imagine Magic getting to that big of a number. Magic / D&D, obviously. They're both at the show now. But anything's possible, man. If anybody told me we'd be doing 22,000 people for a Magic event after we barely got to 10,000 at the Magic 30 show they did 3-4 years ago, I'd have been like, I don't know, we'll see, But here we are. Jeffrey asked, in paper, how good could you realistically make a Sephiroth Aristocrats deck in terms of power and bracket? Okay. If we're talking about, well, you said bracket, which is kind of through the question because I was already thinking of a different train of thought. If you're saying in standard, I think it's totally fine. Like those decks exist, whether you're doing Reap the Past or just sacrifice stuff or whatever. I think those can be actual decks, and those are just the thing. I don't think it's so much about a power level. It's just, build the deck with the right answers for some metagame stuff, and the deck is actually viable, and you're playing black and white that have all the right removal for the variety of cards you'd be worried about. So nothing wrong with that. If you're talking about Commander, everything's possible. Like, I mean, it's not even hard. Like, we have infinite cards that let you sacrifice a thing, get stuff out of the graveyard, get a bonus when something dies. I mean, basically, you just play every single card that says when a creature dies, something happens, and then a bunch of stuff that makes tokens and some ways to sacrifice them, basically. And then just play Sephiroth as your commander, right? I don't think that's that difficult. I think you could totally do that. I don't think it would be that difficult at all. Matter of fact, I bet you if I were to just go to Moxfield right now and just do a search on decks with Sephiroth, there's probably a bunch. Because it's such a popular card. I'll just look up in public decks. Oh yeah, there's a bunch of decks that have Sephiroth in them. Apparently, it's showing me 63 out of 999. So apparently a lot of people like playing Sephiroth. So yeah, there's a bunch of viable ways you could do it. And there's some that are mono black, there's some that are Mardu, some that are 5 color. The 5 color I'd be dubious of. I don't think you need to be more than 3 colors. You should be either black, white, or black, white, red. I don't think you need to be doing all those. And majority of these are either black, white, or black, white, red. So that makes sense. But yeah, I think if you're talking about Commander, totally reasonable. If you're talking about standard, doable. You just have to work a little bit for it to make sure you're targeting the right stuff in the meta. But yeah, thanks for the super chats. It's been a minute since I got one of those, so I appreciate it. But yeah, Magic's in an interesting spot, because, and I talked about this for anybody who watched Color Magic this week or listened to it, our podcast. People like to reuse phrases without understanding the words that they're saying. And one of the things you'll hear a lot is from the people who dislike Universes Beyond, people will say, well, Wizards is just doing Universes Beyond for short-term profits. But you have to understand, we've literally been doing Universes Beyond stuff for 5 years now. Right? Go all the way back to the first time we did the thing with The Walking Dead or whatever, right? Think about 5 years is a long time. That's longer than most games even exist. Right? So it's been a whole lifetime of a single product at this point. And yet, we keep getting more Magic players. And LGSs keep running out of product. And each of these conventions in each city keep getting bigger and bigger, right? Like, it's working. Now, don't get me wrong. Like, I'm not saying I've liked every Universes Beyond thing. I'm not saying you need to like every Universes Beyond thing. But for us to sit here and just say, like, oh, it's short-term profits and nobody cares and nobody wants this, like, that's just disingenuous. It's just flat out not true. Like, even if we take away the collector's boosters, there was still a ton of people that just want Final Fantasy cards. There were people I talked to last weekend that said they started playing because of Warhammer. They started playing because of Fallout. They started playing because of Doctor Who, right? They come in because of these products, but now they're buying everything else because they're full-time Magic players now, right? It's just a thing. Like it just is. Again, I'm not saying you have to like it. And I even understand if you and your players you grew up with the game don't like it. I get it. But to say it's not working is just patently false. It just is. The end game, for any movie, for any store, for any business, is you make a lot of money or you win a lot of awards. Wizards is making a lot of money. And they have been the entire time they've been doing Universes Beyond. Right? It's just a fact. That's how we measure stuff, right? It's, do you make a lot of money? Do you win a lot of awards? If you're doing those two things, you're winning. That's just kind of how we measure stuff. And they're definitely winning. This says 5 years is no longer short-term profit. Yeah, exactly. It's just not. 5 years is a long time. Hell, 5 years is half the time since I've sold my game store. like half the time I have been in Washington State, which is crazy. Hell, 5 years is, well, let's see, it's 5.5 years I've been doing content every day on YouTube. So basically almost my entire run, which is wild to think about. Shane says, I do appreciate how the Universe Beyond stuff feels more MTG and the cards fit in. I think that was the concern, right? I think people thought, oh, we're just going to get all this stuff with like weapons and machines and yada, yada, yada. But at the end of the day, they're still Magic cards. And what's funny is, I always told people, if you were to cover up the images and somebody just gave you the text of this card, how would you feel about it? And a lot of the times they're like, oh, it seems normal. And it's like, well, yeah. So I get that the imagery might not totally fit for you, but the card still functions like a normal card. And they're even making the cards thoughtfully in a way that they work with other recent sets or other recent commanders they've put out or whatever. So people still want to get them because they fit their other decks, right? You want the thing that makes more food tokens or +1/+1 counters or draws more cards or does whatever, right? There's homes for everything, which is very cool. And credit to R&D, because now, I don't know, what did they make? An extra, I didn't even do the math. They've probably made 1,500 new cards this year, which sounds crazy, but somehow, I mean, really, we'd say like in a year, they've had, if we want to call them bannable errors, like 3 cards potentially. That's pretty crazy. That's a pretty high success rate, right? Even when people get upset, like, you know, as much as I don't like Vivi or Tenier or whatever, right? Like, people look at, I can't believe this card exists and how this got made or whatever. It's like, you know what? If you have one egregious error and one questionable thing out of your last, I don't know, 2,000 projects, seems all right, right? If you were at a job and you submitted 1,000 documents and only 2 had any significant errors, pretty good hit rate. You know, that's why I laugh when people are like, whoever allowed this should be fired. I'm like, come on. Like, let's be real. Like, things happen. Now, Vivi does seem pretty egregious, but at the same time, there is a potential world where in testing, they might not have had a situation where it, like, here's the thing to think about. When it's, let's say even 100 people testing a thing, that's way different than 1 million people playing a thing. So we might find things they didn't, and there still might be things that they know or that interact or can prevent things that the rest of us don't ever put together because the metagame shifts to a point that it focuses us in a different direction. So who knows how it got to be the way it is, honestly. Beside Oko and Uro, what was the third card error? I think people would argue that Rage has been a problem over the last at least 9 months, you know? So that's probably a real one. If people wanted to put that on the list, sure. But you're talking about a handful of cards. I mean, even Oko at this point was, what is Oko, 6 years ago now? Something like that. So it's been a while. Considering the number of cards and sets that come out through then, and You got a 99.9% success rate. I'm good with that. Whoever created Sheltered by Ghosts, on the other hand, no, even Sheltered by Ghosts is mostly fine. Because you can always just like sweep the board or kill the enchantment, and then you get a cool combat trick to block your opponent's thing. Like, it's a damn good card, though. Don't get me wrong. Like, it's still a very good Magic card. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting time in Magic. I mean, because here's another thing to think about too. Pretty much everything you're ever a part of as a hobby changes, right? At some point over time. And not just that, how that thing fits in your life also changes. Right? People walk away, like I used to disc golf all the time. I have a whole bag full of discs and everything else. I knew all the local parks. But once I moved, it just didn't make sense for me. And this doesn't mean I have to hate disc golf. It's just at some point in the future I might come back to it, but it just doesn't fit my lifestyle currently. Same thing for Magic. Like some people played because it was how they passed the time, right? It's how they hung out with their friends. It's how they connected socially. But you get different hobbies. You get a family. You get more busy with work or whatever the case is. Then it just doesn't fit. And that's okay too, right? But understand that anybody who started playing Magic in the last, let's say 5 years, right? Around the pandemic, they don't know Magic to be any different. Right? Us old heads and stuff, we're like, I wish we still and honestly, let's be real. The people are like, I wish we had more Magic story related stuff. Like, the story for Magic has never been great. I mean, let's call a spade a spade. You know what I mean? Like, let's be honest. But I get what they're saying. Like, I like the Magic flavor. I want more Magic flavor. Totally understand. But the new crowd doesn't know any different, right? They've walked into this being this way and they like it. So they don't know of a different time. And you're growing up in a world now, if you're, let's say, 15 to 25, a lot of your entertainment is crossovers, right? Smash Brothers, Fortnite, hell, Mortal Kombat, hell, Dead by Daylight had damn, what's his name in it? Oh, hey, thank you for another super chat. Nicolas Cage, that's what I was thinking of. He was in there. And they're just crossing over everything, right? And I think that's just the nature of entertainment at this point. There's money in crossovers. And if you notice, every company, except for when projects have to be pushed back, that have done Universes Beyond with Magic have had their releases right around the time the set comes out, right? Or just before or just after. So they're using it as a promotional tool for themselves too, because they know you're also bringing Magic players into their world. Right, so both companies are benefiting off these projects. None of this is accidental. Bring Slippery Boggle to standard. Yeah, I don't know if we're going to get that anytime soon. But we are going to be doing Lorwyn. So, it could live there. It could be a thing. We'll see. But yeah, I don't know. It's a very interesting time. And it's only going to get crazier because I don't know if y'all saw, we just finally tagged 2 writers for the Marvel or for the Magic movie. Now, admittedly, that doesn't mean anything. We haven't shot one bit of film yet, and we have the showrunner for the animated series, and that's all we know at this point. But assuming these work, and I told people before, they don't even need to be great. We're not saying they just need to be as good as the D&D movie, which was a highly entertaining, very solid, like B+ movie, right? That's all it has to be. Hell, it could be a B- movie and just be entertaining, and we're good. But just don't be trash. As long as they're not trash products, we're going to get so many new faces in the game. And I don't think people even understand that. Like, we're going to have so many people that want to pick it up because, oh, I saw this in a movie, or I saw this on TV, and I really like these characters, or this sounds like a fun thing, whatever. Because look at something like Yu-Gi-Oh! That has the video games, the cartoon, whatever, and the game's not even great, honestly. And it has like a rotating ban list every 6 months and like all kinds of crazy stuff with it. But they have those tools to keep bringing more people in, right? Magic's done basically everything it's done on its own accord until it started doing Universes Beyond stuff, which is kind of insane when you think about it. So if it goes to that level, it can start bringing in the general public. Sky's the limit, really. Any good Orzhov mid-range decks around? Yeah, there's some various life gain decks. There's Sephiroth decks. Like, those are all reasonable. Marvel makes a good movie in the next decade. I'll eat my shoes. But what did you like about not like about the most recent ones? I thought Thunderbolts was a fun ride. And honestly, probably the best version you could do of Sentry, because even I remember reading Sentry in the comics and thinking it's kind of a weird character. So that was actually pretty cool. And I actually enjoyed the most recent Captain America movie. Actually, a lot of people did. So, like, I don't know. Here's the thing about Marvel, though, that I have to tell people to put in perspective. It's hard for people to remember because at this point, we're what, 14 years past, 15 years past since we did, like, the first Iron Man movie? In the beginning, those characters didn't resonate that much with people. Folks kind of learned to like them. And then, we eventually made the Avengers and, those all became a thing and we did spinoffs with Hawkeye and all that. But that was a culminate. Like, people think back to where we ended up. Because remember, we didn't even introduce Doctor Strange until, I don't know, what were we, like year 8 of that whole plan? Right? And then we had Endgame and all that good stuff, right? With Thanos and all that. It took people a while to get that, but we remember the high point, right? Because we can't remember the time where we didn't like these things. And then we basically had to reset back to square one. And now we're like on, if we're calling it a 10-step plan, we're kind of only around like step 4. Right? We're now about to introduce the new big bads, and we're just now starting to pull all this stuff together from these first couple of new phases, right? All the stuff we introduced in like the weird shows with the weird characters that nobody knew about. Right? Just now are we starting to tie all that in so we can start carrying it forward, which was a big chunk of the plot for the new Captain America, right? With the pillar that was left behind from whatever that crazy show was like the gods or whatever, right? All that stuff was being addressed for the first time, so it's part of the new plots going forward. And then, we have Fantastic Four coming, and of course, that's also going to introduce eventually Doctor Doom, and that's a whole thing, and blah, 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 right? And the new Avengers. So there's going to be so much stuff happening. Yeah, there you go. Iron Man was 17 years ago. Like, literally, people are playing Magic that are younger than the Iron Man movie, right? It's hard for people to remember that stuff. Any obscure Spider-Man characters I hope to get an MTG card? That's a reasonable question. Obscure Spider-Man. Like, honestly, weird spin-off Spider-Man would be interesting, right? Do we get like a Spider-Man 2099 as a chase card? Do you get the Amazing Spider-Ham, Peter Parker, right? Like, that would be kind of interesting. But I wouldn't think we're going to get those in the set. They would be neat, but I don't think we're going to get them. Captain America Brave New World is really good and grounded. I thought so too. I thought so. Love the vids. Thank you so much, Blue. Iron Man and Captain America was all B-tier characters. Yeah, and what people don't know is those characters only got movies out of necessity because they had already signed over Spider-Man to a studio, and they've already signed over the license to basically to all of the mutants with X-Men or related stuff to another studio. So that's all they had. And they did that because Marvel was on the verge of bankruptcy at one point. So they sold the rights to those for like it was like a 10-year deal or something. So they didn't have a choice. Once they were in a position to make movies, they looked and said, well, this is all we got. So we just got to work with these guys. And that's what they did. There will very likely be a Punisher card. I'd be surprised if there's not. There's a lot of Spider-Man, Punisher, comic book crossover type stuff. Secretly hoping for a secret lair of his amazing friends. You know what? I'm kind of low-key hoping there's like a Sinister Six build where like each card maybe gets like a +1/+1 for each other Sinister Six character or something that you control. I think that could be kind of cool. Or maybe some bonus if you have multiples. But there's 2 inserts I think we should get. Well, one for sure. One pie in the sky that I know we're not going to get. The one for sure is we should get alternate cover inserts. Because we already know they can do cover style stuff because we've seen the movie poster thing, right? But get like a McFarlane Spider-Man or a Jim Lee Wolverine, right? Something like that. Or a Silvestri like Hulk or something that are chase cards that you can get. And those are like the inserts. Even if you made those like the serialized cards, That could be kind of fun. But for the old school folks in the chat, I don't even know if they do this anymore, but it used to be able to buy trading cards with comic books, right? Comic book characters. And the inserts would be what you'd look at it. They basically look totally silver, but it was like a 3D hologram thing. What if we could get that on a Magic card? Or like the art, instead of being art, is like a little 3D treatment kind of thing. Almost like you get for like Yu-Gi-Oh! And Pokemon, but not quite, because there's still a different effect. I'm looking more for like the nostalgic hit for people. Like, that would be fun. I don't think we'll get it, but it would be fun. Yeah, alternate costumes and stuff are all definitely a thing, for sure. You need a card of the scene of Spider-Man screaming "Shocker" in the church from the cartoon. Yeah, I don't know if they're going to do that. Mostly because my understanding is their contract for it is very specific. It's not the movies, it's not the cartoons, it's very specifically Marvel Comics. So anything that's appeared in a comic, character-wise, visual, whatever, my understanding is they can pull from that or use that for references for stuff or whatever. Other things they cannot, is the way I understand it. Granted, that's kind of through the grapevine from people who are there or whatever, so I don't know who's in charge and made that final decision, but that's my understanding of how it works. We're getting Venom, so I'm happy, though I wish they made the Commander stronger. I don't know. The Commander seems fine. I mean, you need to have varieties of commanders that do different things, and I think they're all reasonable. I mean, I've played a fantastic game the other day with Black Panther, and of those cards that they released at the time, people thought that was like the third or fourth most powerful out of the pile. So, So no MCU costumes. Yeah, won't be any MCU costumes. At least the way I understand it. They don't have the right to use any of that. No likenesses. So no, like, you won't get a Hugh Jackman Wolverine or anything crazy like that. No Tobey Maguire Spider-Mans. Like, those, unless something changed, those will not be in the set. Which works for me anyway, because there's actually a lot of stuff that hasn't appeared in the movies that I think would be really cool to have, if not this year, next year or the following year. Because I'm sure we're going to do an X-Men set. We're going to do an Avengers set. You know, I'm sure those will get announced soon. And those give you options for a lot of things, right? Even just all the villains, right? With the Sentinels and the Hellfire Club and blah, blah. There's like a billion things you can do with the X-Men, right? So it's cool to have access to all of comic book history to be able to do that. Hell, we can actually do the correct New Mutants, because, man, I didn't even watch the movie. I saw the ad, and then I saw the redone ad for the New Mutant stuff. Bruh. Like, I remember sitting in the theater when that ad first ran, and it was a long preview, like, a promo. It was like 2 minutes or something. I'm like, man, what is this? I'm like, this looks kind of creepy and weird, or whatever. And then it got to the end, and it just had, like, the scrawled text of, like, New Mutants, and I went, what the hell? It was, like, crazy kids in an insane asylum or something, and, like, some experimental hospital, and I'm like, this isn't New Mutants at all. They were just like lost mutants or whatever coming together, and then like Cable showed up and helped straighten them out or whatever. Like, what the hell are we doing? So yeah, so that was just weird. That was just weird. No Chris Hemsworth card. No Chris Hemsworth. Let's see. Torrent says, so deal with Marvel, but not Sony, which I guess owns the digital rights too. I don't think that's actually it. My guess is because whatever deals happen, even with Spider-Man, you're getting access to Marvel Comics. I don't think it's just because Spider-Man stuff would be digital. Now again, this is me speculating. I am not putting this on anybody at Wizards or whatever. But I do know that when you do deals with big companies like that, sometimes they want deals to match how long you're going to be printing or using that license. And in the sense of something like that, you're going to have Magic cards for the next 3 to 4 years available in booster packs on Arena. Disney probably was going to want extra money year 2, year 3. And when it's not the new thing, it might be hard for Wizards, like, you know, when whoever sat down and crunched the numbers, it might be like, hey, we're going to make a ton of money in the first year, year and a half. But after that, are we going to want to pay the premium for year 2, year 3 to get this money that isn't going to be all that exciting for us? You know, probably not. So I wouldn't be surprised if that's part of the deal as well. But you never know. I mean, it could just be a Sony digital deal and they couldn't get the deal done with Sony and with Marvel. Like, it could be a lot of different things. I thought the New Mutants was based off the original Ghost Bear story from Claremont. I don't even know the original Ghost Bear story, so I couldn't tell you. I just am basing it on New Mutants books that I read. And then at some point, X-Force stuff. Hugh Jackman is too tall to play Wolverine. At least he's handsome. I mean, here's the thing. When we're talking about taking people and turning them into real life versions of comic books, you're going to have to take liberties with some stuff, right? Because so many of the things, because I told people, even this goes way back to like the first iteration of Galactus that we got in the Final Fantasy movie. People hated the idea of it being like this nebulous thing that went through space and just ate planets or whatever. But at that point in time, you have to remember, like, comic book culture wasn't what it is now for the general public. So to have a giant, like, pink and purple thing with a horn helmet show up and, like, I'm going to consume your planet, but this dude on a surfboard's going to stop me. Or, like, that just wouldn't have played well, right? We would have accepted it because we're comic book fans and we suspend disbelief for a million different things. But the average viewer would have been like, this is a lame looking guy. Like, what is this about, right? Now, if you notice, they already showed like the shadow of Galactus and the new Fantastic Four promo. Nobody's going to have a problem with it, right? We've already done a million. We've done the like crazy stuff with Doctor Strange. We've done Thanos. We've done all the silly stuff with like Cable and Deadpool and all. So like people are just on board with us doing silly, crazy things now in comic books, right? You just got to tell them the story. But turning characters into real life things, I'd rather them just get somebody like Hugh Jackman instead of doing like we had to do with The Hobbit, where we had to do a lot of like forced camera angles to make the dudes seem shorter than they are so they look more like hobbits. And like that, there were sometimes you could feel it was forced to make the image work. When honestly, for my money, you should have just went and got real little people to do the role. I get that the actors we got are good actors and a million people auditioned for the roles. But hey, way back in the day, we got a bunch of little people to be in Willow. We could have done it for Lord of the Rings. That's a rant I'm just never going to get over. X-Men will definitely be my first physical MTG box set. Yeah, if they haven't said so, but if I were thinking or just guessing, the next couple of sets, because we're supposed to get 3 in total for Marvel comic sets, and I would think it would be an X-Men set and an Avengers set, because I can't think of any other licenses you would do from the comic books that have that type of name recognition that would draw a lot of people. Especially right now when there's X-Men 97 and everything else, it just makes sense. And we're starting to revamp up the Avengers as well because they just started shooting recently. So like it kind of makes sense that we would go with those. The MCU movie stuff will be proxy. Somebody's going to do it for sure. If Marvel Snap ever close, could a chance of them coming to Arena be real? Yeah, I don't know. I mean, just like we were talking about a second ago, we don't know how much of that is because of competing licenses or not. You know, it's possible that has something to do with it. I mean, I've heard stranger things. I think I told the story before. I knew people who were working at Fantasy Flight when they were making X-Wing, which was basically a Star Wars game with ships. And the ships were basically built to scale compared to each other. And some people were complaining because one of the big freighter type ships, I can't remember the name of it, wasn't as big as they thought it was going to be. And when I talked to the people at Fantasy Flight, they said specifically because of their contract, once they got over a certain size, it's no longer considered a game piece. It's now considered a statue. And a different company has a license to produce the statues for Star Wars. So they had to be very careful with the scale they use, or else they went over the line and then it becomes something else. So weird things happen when you're dealing with licensed products, is basically why I told that story. So it's possible it could be a thing that Marvel Snap caused an issue. Maybe not. The thing I will say is, let's say 2 years from now, Marvel Snap goes under. I doubt they are in 2 years, but let's say they do. Would Wizards then just put all the stuff for Spider-Man on Arena? Maybe. I mean, again, you wouldn't just get to do it. You'd probably still have to go back to whoever you have to talk to, Marvel, Disney, Sony, whoever, and make that happen. Is the price worth it? I don't know. I can't imagine it's going to be less than, I was going to say a couple $100,000, but hell, probably $1 million. I don't know if they'd want to pay that or not. Good evening to you, Arizona Angels. It was amazing in getting to meet you at MC Vegas. I think it's cool just getting to get out and meet people because as a creator, all we ever see is numbers, right? We do a project, we see numbers come in, we see demographic stuff or whatever, but we don't see the people behind it until we get out and about. So it's kind of cool just getting to meet people for sure. What IP would I like to see in MTG? For me, Witcher or Elder Scrolls. I don't know if I have a dream license at this point. You know, I think some that would sell really well. Like if you could somehow magically get your hands on a Nintendo license, right? I think that would go over huge with the community. Especially seeing how well Bloomburrow went over in Final Fantasy. Yeah, that would go big. I think we're going to get a what was that crazy shows on HBO with all the dragons and all the violence? I don't know why I can't remember. I was going to say The Tale of Song and Ice, but that's not what they used the actual other name. But yeah, Game of Thrones. I think we're going to get that one. I think that's going to be something. Even if it's not a full set, we will probably get that as a smaller set or Commander decks or something. It just fits too perfectly for them to not do at some point. So it wouldn't surprise me if we get that. I'm disappointed they couldn't pay for the license for Assassin's Creed cards to be on Arena. I think the real issue there is that I don't even know how many of the Assassin's Creed cards really had a place. And it was also the issue of like the Assassin's Creed game also got pushed back like damn near a year, like 9 months or something. So it just didn't line up with the release. Like it had so many issues around it. Like Ubisoft was in a tough spot before that game released, and there were just a lot of problems. So it doesn't surprise me in hindsight that it happened the way it did. As long as it doesn't reference season 8. You know what's funny is I've never watched a single episode of Game of Thrones. I know about it because lots of people I know who came to the store talked about the books all the time, played the board game, there's like all these other related things, but I never actually watched the show. I even had somebody pirate it for me at one point. Still didn't watch it. I think I probably still have the CD/DVDs somewhere and never watched an episode, which is crazy. But yeah, I think there's a lot of things we could still do. You know, I think the concern, if there is one, is you're not going to find more than a couple more, I guess we'd call them like A-list products that are going to have the type of pull that Final Fantasy has, right? Because I told you, I think Spider-Man's going to sell very well. It's probably going to beat Lord of the Rings. And at best, it's probably still only going to be 70% of Final Fantasy. Which is crazy, right? That your best-selling set previously was Lord of the Rings, and it's probably going to get beat twice in the following year. Right? Isn't that wild? But that's a thing, right? It's probably going to happen. But like you said, X-Men, Avengers, those will be big. Like I said, I think Nintendo could be a very big one if we can get our hands on it. And then you're down to like, I don't know, Star Wars, Star Trek type stuff. And even then, I don't think those have the same draw. Because as I was explaining over the weekend, Lord of the Rings has a huge fan base. But a lot of them are fans of the books or the movies or whatever. They're not necessarily gamers. Whereas Final Fantasy is damn near an eclipse if you were to make a Venn diagram, right? And if they're already gamers, they probably, a lot of them already play card games or have played some other card game, and they're at least somewhat aware of Magic. And same thing the other way around. Like Magic players are very well aware of Final Fantasy and blah, 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 right? So it just made sense that was going to sell that well. That's why I don't think Spider-Man can beat Final Fantasy. I think it'll do damn well, but I don't think it's going to beat Final Fantasy. And it's partly because a lot of people who are fans of Spider-Man, Marvel, the MCU, whatever, aren't necessarily gamers. They're just comic book fans, and they like the stories. So they're probably not going to pick up Magic cards. Me neither. I know it from people talking about it on the show. Oh, talking about Game of Thrones. Yeah. Maybe we should return to a full Godzilla set one time, or Godzilla cards again. Maybe. I think the problem is, like, having worked on, I think I've told this story before, I worked on a project for a Godzilla card game years ago. And it's hard to come up with enough quality references, I think, to build enough cards the way you'll need them for Magic. Because even for the other game we were building, we had a bunch of cards that were going to be like actions and everything. But for Magic, you need actual like locations and physical characters to be creatures. And, you know, I don't know if Godzilla has enough, honestly. I imagine they're working on a follow-up for the Final Fantasy set. So many other, yeah, I think they will eventually. You know, this first one took a long time, but now that they have everything in place and the connections and the relationships with the company, I wouldn't be surprised if we hear about another Final Fantasy set in like 2028, 2029. Maybe not 29, 27 or 28. I could see them announcing that. It wouldn't be that surprising. It would sell well. And you could still do other versions of the same characters that were in these sets. I think it's totally reasonable. You could do stuff for Final Fantasy Tactics and blah, blah, blah. Like, there's still options. Harry Potter's probably never going to be a Magic product. Just straight up, just because of the person who owns it, probably won't ever be a Magic product. Now, yeah, not everybody. I'm not the biggest Final Fantasy fan, but I'll still play with the cards. The cards are still deep. I don't have to be a fan to use good cards. Still curious if Final Fantasy would have done as good if Lord of the Rings hadn't been released as a set first. Yeah, absolutely. I don't think that matters at all. Like, almost nobody coming in because of the Final Fantasy set cares that Lord of the Rings existed first or not. Like, honestly, one of my woman's friends gave me a list of cards she wants from the set. She doesn't play Magic. She just wants Final Fantasy stuff. You know, so, yeah, I think they're completely independent. Full Metal Alchemist set, I doubt it. Like, I don't even know if Full Metal Alchemist has enough of a draw for people to care at this point. I mean, honestly, till you just said it, I don't even know if I had anybody even reference Full Metal Alchemist. That's not true. One guy that I know, because he actually worked on the card game project, hell, at this point, 15 years ago or something. Actually, longer than that, jeez. Probably closer to 17 or 18 years ago. That's literally the only other person I've heard reference it. So, yeah, probably not. It'd be a cheap license to get. So if they wanted to do like a 5 or 6 card Secret Lair, maybe they could probably pull that off. But I don't think you get a real full set. You know, you're not even getting, that's not even enough, I think, to get you a Commander set. At least 4 cloud cards every Final Fantasy set? Yeah, absolutely. Full Metal Alchemist Brotherhood has more of a draw than Full Metal Alchemist. That's probably true. But yeah, I don't know. Like, honestly, if you were going to do anime stuff, I don't even know what you would get that. I don't think there's any anime right now I can think of that we would build a full set around. There's some that maybe we can make some Commander sets around. But I don't know. Because I'm sitting here trying to think, like, there's several that are popular, but yeah, I don't know if there is one. The problem with Dragon Ball Z is they come out with their own card game like every 3 or 4 years. Like, one comes out, it's popular for like 2 to 3 years, it dies, takes a year or two off, and then like the next version shows up. And it's usually like Bandai or Funimation or one of those companies that has the license or whatever. So it'd be cool if we got it. I think it's possible. Of all the animes, like, that's the one that probably has a shot for sure. And it has enough characters you can work with. Not that it would ever happen, but the only IPs I could see getting a massive fan reaction would be World of Warcraft or Diablo. You know, that's a good call. And I don't think can't ever happen. I think that's actually a viable thing that can happen. I mean, people forget World of Warcraft had its own card game from Upper Deck years ago. So it's not like Blizzard isn't willing to entertain those conversations. So yeah, that could totally be a thing. I could see that being real. Yeah, Berserk's probably not getting one either. Again, at most, if you can build a 5 or 6 card secret layer package, sure. Naruto, maybe, kinda, if I squint hard enough. Bleach, probably not. One Piece could, if it stays popular enough over the next couple years. Maybe. Hearthstone doesn't really have anything. Hearthstone is just World of Warcraft. You know what I mean? Like it's just other licenses from Blizzard. So like yeah, you just make a World of Warcraft one. Like it's not that's not even its own license really. That's the one thing Blizzard has always done well. Like they find ways to use their other licenses in various ways, which is fantastic. Like Riot's starting to do now. I think that's always where the smart money is. When you can use things you already have done the work for, you already have the art assets for, whatever, and you can turn them into something else. Yeah, Resident Evil's a weird one because you don't have like I don't think you could build out a full magic set around all the colors or whatever. Because you only have a couple of handfuls of key characters that I think have real fan bases that people will be excited about. And then it's a bunch of random villains and monsters for the most part. I mean, a couple of sweet locations you could probably work in there. But yeah, I don't know if that's one that A has enough to make a really compelling full set and two gets people excited to go buy magic cards. That's true. One Piece does already have its own card game. And that's what I was saying. If it stays popular enough for a couple of years, that license eventually falls off, whatever, and then Wizard could step in and make a game. Because the other thing to remember too is I'm pretty sure that the only reason we're getting the Spider-Man set or Marvel set when we are is because the only other Marvel licensed physical game I know of was owned for Versus System, who no longer has that license as of either late last year or early this year. So it's timed to the release of that license breaking up, and there's a new licensing contract. Again, Wizards has not told me that. That's just knowing business through the grapevine. That makes the most sense. Yeah, I think it sounds neat. I just don't know what I would be excited about. Plus, the other problem with Resident Evil 2 is there's a lot of just like gun-based weapons, you know, and I don't know how far down that rabbit hole WotC wants to go, which also makes it difficult to produce. Because really, like everything, yeah, yeah. Because other stuff, even when you have weapons, like there's somebody carrying one or whatever, but like we don't have a ton. You still have versus cards. I do too, somewhere deep in my closet. But versus system is a good example of why I tell people when games come out focusing on competitive play too much, it's actually a bad sign for the game. Like I don't think we have a single game I can think of that came out of the gate with like, we're gonna have this pro tour, we're gonna do this thing, we're getting all these pro players, we're gonna give away this much money, whatever. That has really had a significant life beyond like 3 to 4 years. Like if you think about it, your Magic, Pokemon, Yu-Gi-Oh, Dragon Ball Z, whatever, like they're all casual first, competitive second. And it's not an accident. I mean, every single game, it doesn't matter if it's board games, card games, video games, whatever, 99% of your player base will never play a competitive game with it. Yeah, that's probably not, probably 90%. But up to 99% will probably never have a desire to be a pro player or play at the highest levels. Besides Dragon Ball Z, One Piece, or Yu-Gi-Oh, I don't think any anime could. But Shonen Jump as just a brand, maybe. That could be interesting. Because then you get all the titles. You could probably fill that in. After Squall's Sword, I was disappointed in characters' weapons. Fair enough. Yeah, so I don't know. It's a weird thing to think about, right? When we talk about what these licenses look like and what it would cost. First off, right? How big your license is. Because that's part of the deal for Wizards in, right? Because no doubt, Final Fantasy was expensive. No doubt, Marvel was probably equally or more expensive. But they know that those are going to return like $500 million in sales or what. Maybe not that many. Well, I say that. Final Fantasy probably is. So, yeah, who knows? Between the two licenses, they probably did get close to $600-700 million in sales by the time we get to the end of the year, right? So if each one cost you $5 million to negotiate or whatever, like you don't care, right? Because you're gonna get your money's worth out of it. I don't know what you'd have to pay to get a Resident Evil, a One Piece, whatever, and still know that you're gonna make enough off of it to make it worth it. I think that's a tough call. That's what I was saying. Like, we only have a handful of other big licenses left, and they're crazy, right? Where we're talking about Star Wars. Again, you have to deal with the mouse at Disney, but, and Nintendo, but they're notoriously just difficult to deal with in general. Not to mention they still technically have the Pokemon card game under their thing. They're still producing that, so, yeah. I don't know if they want a competing product or not with their licenses. Like, that could be an issue. So yeah, it's a weird thing. It's a weird thing. I don't really know. I mean, we'll find out. I'm pretty sure in Atlanta there will be an announcement of here's the releases for the next year. We'll find out a couple of them. One of them we're pretty sure is already going to be a Marvel one. My guess is is it X-Men or is it Avengers, right? Let's just bring Phyrexians back and do them justice this time. What justice is there to do? They seemed fine last time. I mean, like, what would you want from them? Like, they literally tried to storm all of the multiverse. Like, what else would you want from bad guys? Star Trek with all of its series? Ooh, that'd be interesting. If they could get it. Again, that's going to be an expensive one. I'd like somebody higher than me, has to figure out, is that worth it? And it might be, I don't know. I think the problem for any type of things like Magic or any fantasy-based stuff is you only have a limited number of villains you could write stories around anyway, right? We're basically on the precipice of bringing back Nicol Bolas, which we knew because we didn't kill him. We just put him in a stasis room or whatever. Like, he was going to be back at some point, right? So we've now reached that point. I'm not excited about it, but I get it. The character's super popular. I told it, for me, for my money, because we still have Emrakul, sadly, still ready to be a thing, so we'll do Eldrazi again at some point. I think the next big bad, for my money, should just be Jace. Because honestly, the logic is simple. He's done so many things where he's messed with his own brain. Hell, he's even tried to make himself forget things and whatever. At some point, that's going to get to you. Or even have like a subplot going on, and then we find out that, I don't know, Jace's mind has gone crazy and he has like a split personality and there's a crazy Jace and a good Jace or whatever, right? That would be way more fun as a villain to read about and for people to write than just like, all right, it's Phyrexians again. It's Eldrazi again. It's Nicol Bolas again, right? And I've never been a fan of that. I am okay if like we let the big bad do their thing for long enough and we just finally defeat the big bad. Right? I think I've told people before, anybody who's listened to me rant, part of my issue with the Buffy series was that Spike stayed around way too long. And I get it, because Spike was good looking, he was popular with the fans, whatever, we didn't want to kill him, right? Even though he antagonized all the Slayers and whatever, and that was stupid. But eventually, he dies. I'm like, all right, cool, it's about time. And then he just shows up in Angel. And it's like, bruh, really? We couldn't even just kill him off at all? We're like, well, if you like him, we're putting him on our other show. Right? Like, come on. That stuff bothers me. Like, if you're going to kill a character, just kill him. That's why I love what Marvel did with Jean Grey. Like, Jean Grey just died. And because we get so used to characters coming back, pretty much anything that was an indicator of like, oh, there's this thing at the end of the space coming toward us or whatever, and like, oh, it must be like the Phoenix Force coming back. Nope, it's something else. Oh, a new baby's born and she has red hair. That must be like Jean Grey reincarnated. Like, nope, it's just a different character, right? There was all these things that people kept going, oh, this is it. And it's like, nope, she's still dead, y'all. And like, I'm okay with that, right? Like, give them their time, give them their moment. It can be a big climactic scene or whatever, and then the character's gone. And that's okay. We have our memories of them. Because otherwise, like, deaths don't matter. You know what I mean? And if any of you have watched 24, the TV series, outside of Jack Bauer, who honestly, they set it up a couple times where we thought like he was even going to die. Like, anytime a character took a bullet or something, they were done. Like, and as a viewer, there were times, and I ain't going to spoil it in case somebody wants to go watch it because it's a great TV show. Though, second season, first half, a little rough. But literally, somebody gets shot, and you're just like, oh God, that's it. We're not, like, you were attached to that character, and they're done, you know? Though, and it mattered because there's one time where a character gets shot and you're pretty sure they're dead, but then they actually don't die and they show up later and you're excited about it because you thought they were dead, right? So even the act of potentially dying had weight with you as a viewer. But if it was just like, oh, nobody's ever going to die, they're the good guys, whatever, like, then it just doesn't matter and you quit caring. But Urza is a real big bad. Yeah, Urza was under eugenics and shit. Like he was a real bad dude. Enterprise as a commander would be cool with Picard. Yeah, that'd be a cool one. I think people weren't happy with how the Phyrexians lost to basically just Elspeth. That's fine. That's superhero, supervillain, blah blah stuff. Like, that happens. Superman comes up on 3 Kryptonians and finds a way to win. You know, like that's all right. Hate how Dragonstorm wrote off the previous Dragon Lords. But why not? Like, if they were causing hell and they had to summon new dragons, then we have new Dragon Lords for a new generation. Like, what were the old ones supposed to do for us as players at this point? Like, I get it if you were fans of them or you like those cards. But, I mean, stories have to move on. I don't know what we were supposed to do with them. But I get, people get attached to stuff. And the people they're attached to, they don't ever want to go away. Right? Like, my view is different. I'm glad that you made something good enough I got attached to and I got to enjoy the moment. So when they go away, I feel something. Right? That's the way I view it. Yeah, I would like a new big bad too, if I got my choice. A new Bolus is going to be unbearably good and bad at the same time. Yeah, probably. Kind of like the new Ugin, right? It's super good if it sticks, but it's not like in every deck type thing. Oh, he showed up in... Oh, well, I guess if he showed up in Bones, he probably showed up as himself, not as Spike. But that's funny. I didn't realize he showed up in that show. Karen Page has never come back. Isn't Alfred dead now as well? Actually, I don't know. See, DC has always bugged me as a reader, though, because so many characters supposedly died and then they just come back. It's like, oh, no, this was like the Robin from Earth 37, and this guy didn't really die. He's the one from 128 or whatever. It's like, whatever. Like, that's why in DC I didn't enjoy it as much because, like, deaths didn't have the same impact. Do I have time, and would you mind if I shared a deck somehow and gave me your opinion? At this point, we're just kind of chilling unless there's super chats attached. We've done all the deck work. Now we're just kind of chilling, unless somebody pitches up a little extra. I like it when characters don't have plot armor. Oh, absolutely, absolutely. That's why 24 was cool for me, because man, while Jack Bauer was the main character, when he got out of line or did something crazy, even the president was like, dude, if you do this, I can't vouch for you. You're on your own. And man, he had consequences to pay. Like, he didn't just get to run rampant. And I'm like, yep, that's what should happen. Like, so that's why I enjoyed that show so much, is it made every action had importance, right? And the way they went about stuff mattered. And if things didn't go, like, in that show, there's one point early on where the bad guys are like, if we don't get this thing, whatever it is, by like 3 o'clock, we're going to kill a bunch of people downtown or whatever. And as a viewer, I'm just like, oh, whatever. The good guys will intercept them or whatever. And then they didn't. And they just like gassed them all or whatever. And people were dying. I'm like, oh, this show's going to be like that. Like, you know, like, so immediately you're on like, no, ain't nobody playing around. There's real consequences to all these actions. And from right then, the tone is set that you're like, oh, bad guys are serious here. Okay. Right. And that changed everything. I don't know the lore. Is Ugin the big dragon lord? Ugin is like, I think, Bolus's big brother or something. If I remember right. I think that's what it is. Oh, I'm getting text now. What's going on? Oh, okay, cool. Well, I'll just wrap up here in a bit. Yeah, Lute had plot armor. That's fair. But he was always gonna have plot armor. Same thing with Kellen, because they were like the thing holding the story together for 3 or 4 sets. So, I get it. But yeah, I'd like there to be consequence. The problem, though, here's the biggest thing with Magic. Is that Magic stories can only be so good and please don't take this the wrong way, because I'm not trying to devalue anybody's job. Like, writing is difficult, and I know that means a lot to people. But it simply doesn't matter to people playing the game. Right? And I've done this test. I've walked in the stores and even asked people about the history to their favorite card, and they don't know. Like, what's the backstory to their commander? They don't care. Right? They just want to do the cool thing with their cards. I've played Magic forever. I can only tell you maybe bits and pieces of the story. Not that I think it's irrelevant. It just hasn't affected most of my gaming with the cards. Hell, I honestly couldn't even tell you the story to a bunch of video games I played in the past. After a point, I just forget about them, right? They're relevant in the moment for me to get through the game, and then after that, unless there's a big moment or two, they don't really stick out for me. And I think that happens to a lot of people. And that's tough, because I get it. Like, people want their key things in Magic. If you're a Vorthos person, to be more important, to get more attention, to get better writers. Like, I get all that. But if you ask people, it's not a thing, sadly. Your Shivan Dragon is just a dragon to me. That's it. Yeah, exactly. Right? But there's people I know of that can literally tell you the difference between like a Shivan Dragon and some other dragon, and the history to Shiv and this, that, and the other. And it's like, cool. It's awesome that exists for those people. But they also make up like 5% of the Magic community. It's no fault. I mean, there's nothing wrong with it. It's cool being attached to the lore. It's just when decisions have to get made, I get why they make the decisions they make. But all right, y'all. I think on that note, I'm going to wrap up because it is getting late. I need to go feed my cats and things before they start yelling at me for starving. Appreciate the super chats we did get on this one. Thank you so much. Those will go toward feeding cats. They like to eat, so, they get to stay healthy. But yeah, don't forget, you can become a member on YouTube. I will have another video coming out tonight or probably tomorrow, kind of recapping some stuff from Vegas and Not for people who were channel members. Also, just thank you in general. I mean, getting to meet all y'all the last couple of weeks at all the events and stuff I've been traveling to, just the support that's there is like, we're not the biggest YouTube channel. We don't get the most views, but y'all are friendly and loyal, and I like meeting y'all out there, and it's great. So I really, really appreciate it. It does mean a lot, seriously. But yeah, join us in the Discord. If you haven't come and hung out, we do have a lot of conversation in there. You can get deck help between all these videos and other stuff. And I'm going to be making it a more regular thing to open up stuff in the Discord to try to find decks from viewers that we want to showcase. So maybe you get your 15 minutes. So that's the thing too. Is Dimir or Esper still good in Standard? I don't know if they were good in Standard for a very long time, since we got rid of Rogues or whatever from Standard. So I would say right now, probably not. They're not going to be a top tier. Could they be playable? Yes. But top tier, probably not. All right, on that note, y'all, I'm going to get out of here. I got things to do. Actually, I need to eat myself, not just feed the cats. So, but yeah, for real, thanks for hanging out. This was a good stream. Went a bit longer than I wanted, but it was good chats. Hope everybody enjoyed it. I will see y'all in the next one.